Chapter 1943. Han Fei. The Palace Master? Gosh. He's the Master of Yin Yang? In an instant, a group of people on the Dark Phoenix exclaimed in surprise. Long Wu and the others were also shocked. Who would have thought that Han Fei would suddenly appear? Pearl, Long Wu, and the others looked up at him with their eyes wide open. Han Fei wasn't that handsome, but his temperament was outstanding. Now that he had become a king, how could ordinary people ignore him? Plus, Han Fei had killed kings consecutively. Everyone on the ship couldn't help but be amazed and in awe. Even Xian Feng was a bit surprised. She bowed slightly. Greetings, Palace Master. Han Fei shook his head calmly. I don't even know if the Yin Yang heaven can be saved. The witch pirates don't need to acknowledge me as their Palace Master for now. Xian Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. There seemed to be more to Han Fei's words. However, it wasn't convenient to discuss it now. Xian Feng said, After all, everyone here is from the Lunar Academy. We may not recognize them outside, but we still have to distinguish our identities here. May I know why you're here, Palace Master? Han Fei didn't argue with Xian Feng. Instead, he threw a jade slip to her and said, Attack Dreamweaver. Wait for me here. Xian Feng was speechless. Attack Dreamweaver? Wasn't it enough after attacking the Avalon of 5 elements? Now he wanted to attack Dreamweaver in the inner area? Unlike the Avalon of 5 elements, the Dreamweaver sky was an inner domain immortal palace. Long Wu and the others were also fascinated. Why was he so excited right from the start? This man was as crazy as he was when they first met. Long Wu and Pearl were already shocked when Han Fei defeated the 4 frenzied kings. Now they were going to attack an immortal palace, just with the few of them? How could he do that? Xian Feng couldn't help but say, Palace Master, Dreamweaver isn't the Avalon of 5 elements. Han Fei said indifferently, Don't worry. The Misfortune, Gale, and Scarlet Fire pirates will be with you. The 4 kings will attack the city, plunder resources, and plunder Dreamweaver. I'll deal with Dreamweaver Immortal Palace. Hiss, even Xian Feng was surprised. What? Among the top 10 pirate groups, Han Fei had subdued 3 more. However, Xian Feng seemed to understand that Han Fei seemed to be different from ordinary people. As long as he could find the Red Fire pirates, Shui Ran and the others definitely wouldn't be able to resist him. However, if he wanted to command the top 10 pirate groups, Han Fei must have some way to restrict them. Otherwise, according to the temperament of pirates, how could they be obedient to Han Fei's orders? Suddenly, Xian Feng seemed to understand something. How could Han Fei suddenly appear here? I've never had any way of contacting Han Fei. How did Han Fei find me? It seemed that Han Fei had some kind of tracking method that could find anyone he wanted. Because of this, these pirate groups surrendered to him. If the 4 pirate crews attacked at the same time, they might not be able to completely suppress an immortal palace. However, there was still Han Fei. With Han Fei's ability to kill his way into the 5 elements immortal palace, even if Sha Jimeng was at home, she might not be able to deal with him. Xian Feng nodded slightly. Yes, Palace Master. Han Fei glanced at the crowd and found that there were many peak-level explorers among the witch pirates. Finally, his eyes fell on the hot pot on Long Wu's side. He smiled, threw a sun-moon shell, and said, The seasoning is not enough. It's not tasty enough. Long Wu. Swish, with a flash of golden light, Han Fei disappeared without a trace. It was not until Han Fei disappeared that the people of the witch pirates came back to their senses for a long time, and then they burst into an uproar. 2 half-kings pulled Long Wu and said, Little Wu, is this the Palace Master? He's so cool. He comes and goes without a trace. Long Wu came back to her senses, looked at the sun-moon shell in her hand, and smiled. He's at the Pioneer Sea Realm. What do you think? Pearl looked at Xian Feng thoughtfully. She was wondering what Han Fei meant when he said that the Yin Yang sky might not be able to survive. Han Fei pondered. It was just Dreamweaver, and Yu Meng had already died in his hands. Apart from Sha Meng, there should only be 2 kings left. And he had found 4 kings and more than 400 venerables. No matter how strong Dreamweaver was, how could he resist such a force? Since Grand Pure One and Wuji both thought that he was easy to deal with, he had to teach them a lesson. The Avalon of 5 elements was just the beginning, and Dreamweaver was just a warning. Since they were going to fight, they might as well start now. 20 days later. Outside Dreamweaver, in an area that obviously deviated from the normal route, several large ships broke through the void with a swish. As soon as Xian Feng and the others arrived, they found that as many as 9 ships were already docked here. As soon as Xian Feng landed, Chen Guangjia said, "Xian Feng, demon girl? It's been a long time." Xueran also appeared at the bow of the ship. "Tsk, more people are coming. It seems that Brother Han has put in a lot of effort to attack Dreamweaver this time." Zhou Chun of the Misfortune Pirates asked in a low voice, "Is anyone else coming?" Chen Guangjia shrugged. "I don't think so. Are we going to destroy Dreamweaver if we come again?" Xueran said, "The Grand Pure One and the other 4 palaces are hunting down the Sword God Palace. The inner region is empty, and Dreamweaver has 2 kings at most. With Brother Han, we have 5 kings. Even if Sha Jiming is at home, she won't be able to escape death." Zhou Chen said, "I don't kill ordinary people. If there are kings, I'll do it myself." Chen Guangjia said grumpily, "Old Zhou, enough. You'd better shut your mouth. If a king happens to be a guest at Dreamweaver, it'll all be your fault." Zhou Chen. At this moment Xueran said, "Where's Brother Han? Why isn't he here yet?" Less than 10 breaths after Xueran's words, a golden light flashed, and a figure appeared. Everyone thought it was Han Fei, but when they saw who it was, they all gasped. "Hiss, the second sword god? King Slayer with 1 sword." For a moment, the 4 kings felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy. This man's reputation was no better than Han Fei's. Medicine King Sky, known as the second sword god, had recently reappeared in the Jianghu. He wasn't someone that ordinary people could stop. Xueran cupped his hands. "Greetings, Senior Yijian." Chen Guangjia said, "Brother Wang, you killed Bei Xianbing with your sword. It's a pity that I didn't get to see you. Brother Wang, you're indeed extraordinary." Zhou Chen cupped his hand. "Greetings, Brother Wang." Xian Feng was confused. Didn't Wang Yijian appear in the same way as Han Fei? Xian Feng slightly nodded. "Brother Wang." Han Fei put his hands behind his back and let his white hair cover his face. When the wind blew, he waved his hand and threw out 4 jade slip. He said casually, "Han Fei has his own business to attend to. I'll lead the battle on this trip to Dreamweaver, and you can stall the venerables of Dreamweaver. The purpose of this trip is to rob the Dreamweaver Immortal Palace of resources and treasures. Just try not to hurt the weak." Everyone calmed down. If Han Fei didn't come, Wang Yijian would do the same. In terms of battle prowess, they were actually more convinced of Wang Yijian. With him around, they wouldn't have to worry even if the top 10 Pioneer Sea Realm experts came. As for where Han Fei went, they didn't want to know. Han Fei was ruthless, and it was better to be with a pure sword cultivator like Wang Yijian than with Han Fei. Anyway, for pirates they would take whatever they could. Besides, they all understood Han Fei's intention. Killing King and Venerables was to intimidate the 36 Xuantians. He was clearly telling the others that whoever dared to collude with the Grand Pure Everlasting God would suffer the same fate as the Avalon of 5 Elements and Dreamweaver. Xian Feng asked, "When do we do it?" Han Fei tore open the void and said indifferently, "Let's wait." With that, Han Fei stepped into the void lightly and disappeared. When Han Fei left, Chen Guangjia said, "That's good. I've offended the Avengers before, and this time, we can improve our relationship. Furthermore, Brother Han was able to invite this person over. Your abilities are truly admirable." Xueran nodded slightly. "I agree. Dream Weaver, Immortal Dream City. Han Fei turned into an ordinary person and appeared in Immortal Dream City. Although he was going to take down Dream Weaver, it didn't mean he would underestimate it. The inner domain Immortal Palaces were indeed extraordinary. Immortal Dream City itself was surrounded by a large array, and he had been here for so many days just to break it. He had marked most of the resource targets in detail this time. How could he leave the good stuff for Xueran and the others to snatch? Of course, he would strike first to gain the upper hand. The last time he attacked the Avalon of 5 elements, he hadn't been prepared enough. Otherwise, how could an immortal palace plunder a mere billion supreme-grade spirit stones? However, the reason why he brought the other pirate groups was naturally to warn the major immortal palaces. I have many trump cards now, and my means are ruthless. I never play tricks with you. Anyone who dared to follow the grand pure everlasting God and touch the yin-yang heaven would be turned upside down. Chapter 1944. Although Dreamweaver Sky was an immortal palace that specialized in the path of illusions and dreams, not everyone in the immortal palace could walk the same path. There weren't many who could reach the peak of the path of illusions and dreams. Some people only pursued the Tao of the palace and didn't even know what they were really pursuing. Because the palace's specialty was creating illusions and dreams, most people could only go with the flow. Most people couldn't pursue this Tao, but they at least had some understanding of illusions. Han Fei shook his head slightly. It seems that the foreign palaces didn't tell ordinary people that cultivating the same Tao would lead to nothing but leaks in the end. The old turtle said, pursuing the same path doesn't necessarily lead to the same Tao, but even so, the probability of finding the same Tao is not small. Han Fei sighed slightly. It's a pity that I don't know if there's anyone walking the same Tao as me. Han Fei walked on the streets of Dream-Weaving Sky. At this moment, he was in the central area of Dream County, near the periphery of the Dream Immortal Palace. Outside the Dream Immortal Palace was a trial ground. It was open to everyone in Dream-Weaving Sky. As long as you thought you could pass this dream trial, you could come. Once you passed, you would have a meteoric rise. Han Fei had already calculated today. The hexagram was between inauspicious and great inauspicious. In the end, to make sure nothing went wrong, he added a few strands of chaotic energy and put his luck on the inauspicious hexagram. At this moment, he was waiting for an opportunity. When the scorching sun was at its brightest, he would break the protective array of Dream Immortal City. Han Fei stood in the air with his hands behind his back, waiting quietly. This was a very normal thing. People of Dream-Weaving Sky would look at their own palace in awe, and no one would think anything was different. But perhaps because of Han Fei's extraordinary temperament, a woman walked over from the void. The woman said, "Once you enter the Dream Immortal Palace, there will be no more worries. Are you here to explore the dream, too?" Han Fei didn't expect that someone would come to find him, so he thought for a moment. Logically speaking, he was indeed here to explore the dream. After all, if he wanted to enter the Dream Immortal Palace, there would probably be a great illusion land waiting for him. So, Han Fei nodded slightly. "Yes, I'm going to see how strong the Tao of dream weaving is." Seeing Han Fei nod slightly, the woman couldn't help but feel a little strange. He thought in his heart, this fellow's strength has already attained the elementary exalt realm, so why haven't I encountered him in the past? Was it because he wanted to keep a low profile? However, the woman couldn't help but chuckle. The art of dream weaving? That is the palace master's unique great Tao. It is said that through the illusions of one's soul, one can spontaneously weave dreams. At the peak of this Tao, one can be trapped in eternal reincarnation. Han Fei chuckled. It sounds very powerful. Seeing that Han Fei didn't even look back and didn't seem to be interested in chatting with her, the woman curled her lips. "Fellow Taoist, it's getting late. Aren't you going to explore the dream?" Han Fei shook his head slightly. "I'm still a moment away. The woman was speechless. There was even a time limit for challenging a dream? This person is really strange. But this person is so cold, not quite the same as what I've seen before. However, if this person could successfully clear the dream, there would be a chance for them to meet again in the future. Otherwise, there was no point in not seeing him. After a while, when this woman arrived outside the immortal dream array, she was immediately surrounded by a group of women. Gueshua, why are you so late? Everyone is waiting for you. Yes, Gueshua, you are finally willing to come to the dream. I bet you can definitely pass it. Gueshua, if you pass the immortal dream array, don't forget me. Outside the array, many people looked surprised. Wow, is that Meng Gueshua? It is said that she is a rare heavenly talent of the Dream Weaving Academy? Someone sighed. Yes, that's her. She didn't come here until she reached the Venerable Realm. She actually wants to directly become the Palace Master's personal disciple. Someone nodded. If not, why wait until today? With her talent, she would have already succeeded. Hundreds of kilometers away, Han Fei watched Meng Gueshua walk into the dream array and couldn't help grinning. Haha, a once-in-a-thousand-years chosen one? What a pity! About half an hour later, Han Fei looked up several times. When he saw the scorching sun shining high and the clouds and mist dispersing, he smiled slightly. It's time. Han Fei reached out his hand in the void, and hundreds of array patterns gathered. At the same time, the dream city suddenly trembled. In the sky, the scorching sun fell like red rain. Hum, 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 as if a heavenly fire tens of thousands of kilometers had suddenly descended. The temperature of the dream immortals was crazily soaring. In less than 10 seconds, the temperature of the dream immortals suddenly rose by 40 or 50 degrees. All of a sudden, a woman broke through the void from the immortal dream palace. As soon as she came out, she formed an array in her hand, and a pestle that looked like a flower was scattered in the void. When the pestle appeared, the entire periphery of the Dream Weaving Academy was covered in a layer of mist, covering the sky and blocking the Dream Immortal's palace. Han Fei slightly smiled. He had set up this array for more than half a month. How could it be easily blocked? The 2 jade slips in Han Fei's hand broke, and suddenly, tens of thousands of complicated arrays appeared in the Dream Immortal's palace. These arrays appeared one after another, each of which was a heavenly fire array, attracting the essence fire of the scorching sun. There were tens of thousands of them. The power of each array was comparable to the attack of a peak-stage venerable. How could a mere king deal with such an array? At this moment, another figure broke out of the Dream Immortal's palace. Han Fei slightly smiled. Other than Shajimeng and Yu Meng, the Dream Weaving Academy still had 2 kings, Feng Menglong and Chu Mengyan. Both of them had come out. Wouldn't the Dream Immortal's palace fall? The woman who appeared was Chu Mengyan. She yelled, "Who are you? How dare you break into the Dream Weaving Academy? All venerables of the Dream Weaving Academy, listen to my command. In 15 minutes, this king wants to see everyone shatter." Han Fei curled his lips. Don't talk big. One of the jade slips in Han Fei's hand broke. Outside the ocean, Zhou Chen, Qin Guangjia, Shui Ran, and Xian Feng's expressions suddenly changed. Xian Feng yelled, "Witch pirates, get ready to travel through the void. Everyone, get into battle mode and charge into the Dream Weaving Academy." Hearing this, Qin Guangjia immediately yelled, "Gale pirates, plunder the Dream Weaving Academy. This is our chance to get rich." Shui Ran commanded, "Everyone, attack." Zhou Chen commanded, "Misfortune pirates, plunder the Dream Weaving Academy. Don't hurt anyone by accident." Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, a total of 12 ships had broken through the void and left the Dream Weaving Academy. The heavenly fire had been burning for 100 minutes. 1/3 of the arrays Han Fei had set up had been broken. At this speed, Han Fei's arrangements would be broken in less than 200 minutes. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly, and he threw another jade slip into the void. The jade slip cracked, and an enormous spirit-gathering array that was 100,000 meters wide appeared above the dream-weaving academy. Feng Menglong and Chu Mingyan's expressions changed drastically. Such a large array couldn't be set up by anyone. If there was a single mistake, the array couldn't be completed. Feng Menglong yelled, "I'll break this array. You clean up the heavenly fire array." Feng Menglong dashed out, but the spirit-gathering array was reflected in the void and melted into the Dream-Weaving Academy's city-guarding array. Because he was a spirit-gatherer, the city-guarding array wouldn't reject this kind of array that could accumulate spiritual energy. Therefore, the moment the spirit-gathering array was melted into the city-guarding array, it operated at full power. At the center, there seemed to be a power that was about to explode. Hiss! Feng Menglong was shocked. "Who wants to destroy the Dream-Weaving Academy?" Rumble. After the spirit-gathering array appeared, it melted with the city-guarding array and began to explode. What could Feng Menglong do? He could only suppress this place with his Tao to prevent the terrifying explosion from hitting the Dream Immortal City. A huge firework 1,000 kilometers wide spread in the sky, blowing a huge hole in the Dream-Weaving Academy's city-guarding array. Feng Menglong tore the void apart, trying to channel the power into the infinite void. However, to his astonishment, the remaining energy of the large spirit-gathering formation that had exploded had actually turned into thousands of small spirit-gathering formations, and at this moment, they were frantically absorbing the energy that originally belonged to the great city-protecting formation. Chu Mingyan's hundreds of clones were busy breaking the heavenly fire array and couldn't help. They tried to find the enemy while breaking the array. However, Chu Mingyan hadn't broken the heavenly fire array in less than 100 seconds. 12 pirate ships came out of the void. Hiss! Feng Menglong and Chu Mingyan were both dumbfounded. The dream-weaving supremacies were also dumbfounded. The top 10 pirate groups? Attack the Dream-Weaving Academy? Were the top 10 pirate groups crazy? Did they want to start a war with the 36 immortal palaces? Ha ha ha! Qin Guangjia shouted. "Isn't this Feng Menglong? Are you busy? Come and fight me." Xian Feng said, "Chu Mingyan, if you don't want to hurt the civilians, come over here." As for Shui Ran and Zhou Qin, they stayed here. The 4 pirate groups, more than 400 supremacies, all flew away. Whoever got the resources of the Dream-Weaving Academy could take them away, as if they were injected with stimulant. On Han Fei's side, the illusions of mountains and rivers had already appeared. Luo Xiaobai and Xia Shaochan had already known the plan. Han Fei had even arranged the resource distribution map for them. They rushed into the Dream Immortal City and began to search for resources. And Han Fei had completely transformed into the appearance of Wang Yijian. Above the Dream Immortal City, somewhere in the sky, Han Fei drew a line in the void, and the gate of the Immortal Palace opened. The first update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1945. The reason why Han Fei chose Dream-Weaving Sky was that, after evaluating its comprehensive strength, it was relatively weak in the inner area. This time, the Grand Purity Palace had invited the other immortal palaces to attack the Sword God's 4 palaces, and Dream-Weaving Sky was one of them. Logically speaking, only Sha Zhimeng would be able to take this position. Otherwise, Feng Menglong and Chu Mingyan might not be able to pressure the Sword God's 4 palaces even if they both went. Of course, even so, Han Fei couldn't be sure that Dream-Weaving Sky didn't have other strong masters. Some immortal palaces would announce to the outside that they had a few kings, but they would secretly hide 1 or 2 kings in case of emergencies. This was why Han Fei had invited 4 of the top 10 pirate group. The moment Han Fei entered the Immortal Palace, he saw Zhou Qin and Shui Ran attack the Dream Fairy Palace. The location of the Dream Fairy Palace was equivalent to the location of the central holy city in the Yinyang sky. There must be an extraordinary setup in that place, and there must be a lot of resources stored there. Since Qin Guangjia and Xian Feng already had opponents, Zhou Qin and Shui Ran wouldn't just stand in the void and watch. Naturally, the immortal palace of dreams became their target. With these two holding the immortal palaces back, Han Fei could naturally break into the dream fairy palace. According to Han Fei's expectation, there would be danger here, but it shouldn't be too much. After all, if Sha Jimeng wasn't here, as long as he destroyed the small world where the immortal palace was located, he could rob the resources inside, drag the immortal palace out, and trample on it. Han Fei broke the void and went in. But then he suddenly found himself in a place that he didn't expect. F***CK. It's starting already? Han Fei stood in the air, and he was now in the 100,000 mountains. Han Fei didn't underestimate the difficulty of breaking into the Dream Fairy Palace, but before he saw the immortal palace, he seemed to have fallen into an illusion. Swoosh! A black shadow flew over. Han Fei fixed his eyes on it and found it was the Sky's Survey Golden Eagle. If this was the real 100,000 mountains, it wouldn't be a big deal, but this was fake. Moreover, before the Sky's Survey Golden Eagle arrived, the murderous intent had already appeared. The Sky's Survey Golden Eagle spread its wings, and two sharp golden blade auras came straight at him. Huh? See expansion realm power? Han Fei didn't blink, because he wasn't sure whether the power was real or illusory, but it didn't matter. So what if it was the power of the sea expansion realm? Han Fei stretched out his hands and caught the two giant blade lights. Gotcha! Bang! Han Fei felt that this power was real, because the Taoist aura contained in it was trying to impact his body. Since the attack was real, it meant that this was the defensive power of the Dreamweaver Celestial Palace, and not the power of the so-called Sky Surveying Golden Eagle. Han Fei didn't use the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes immediately. After all, he was now appearing as Wang Yijian. If he used the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes when he wasn't sure whether or not Dream-Weaving Sky was present, then wouldn't Wang Yijian's identity be exposed? So, Han Fei closed his eyes and swallowed this illusion with the power of the 9 poison treasure silkworm. In fact, it shouldn't be difficult for Han Fei to break through this battle with the Multitude Navigator, but he wanted to test the power of the 9 poison treasure silkworm. Sure enough, when there was something wrong with the 100,000 mountains, Han Fei found a clue. And this clue was in the Divine Child Peak. No matter how strong the environment of Dream-Weaving Sky was, it couldn't disguise the power of gods, so the 9 poison treasure silkworm swallowed a weak illusion. Han Fei grinned, and with a flash of golden light, the Yin-Yang reincarnation knife slashed out, and the entire Divine Child Peak collapsed. However, Han Fei's face suddenly changed. He thought that after the Divine Child Peak collapsed, the illusion would be gone. But who could have expected that the collapsed Divine Child Peak would collapse and recover, and that his Yin-Yang reincarnation knife couldn't cut through this illusion? It's impossible. Once there was an error in the illusion, it should have collapsed. How could the weird technique of Dream-Weaving Sky be able to repair it? Han Fei tried to use the 9 poison treasure silkworm to swallow another illusion, but, this time, the 9 poison treasure silkworm didn't respond. Huh? It shouldn't be. To the 9 venom treasure silkworm, all of these actions that confused one's soul were all poison. It could eat any kind of soul poison. This was clearly recorded in the jade slip that Huang Jie gave him. Unless the 9 poison treasure silkworm had fallen asleep. However, when Han Fei looked into the depths of his soul, the 9 poison treasure silkworm was still there, and its chubby body moved twice. It didn't look like it had fallen asleep at all. No. That was an illusion just now, but now it's a dream. Han Fei immediately understood. When the illusion and the dream merged, it was like a dream within a dream, which was even more difficult to figure out. How could ordinary people think of this? As a matter of fact, the Sky Survey Golden Eagle that had disappeared just now had returned. Not only did the Sky Survey Golden Eagles come, but Han Fei also saw mountain giants stand up from the depths of the mountains. The Giant King pointed his axe at Han Fei, the Beast King leaped over with his rod, and the heavenly crystal turned into its true form, a giant rock, and also attacked. Wang Han! Little Wang Han! Go to hell! Knowing that it was a dream, Han Fei had to find a way to wake up. He couldn't let the power of this dream affect his mind. However, when the giant king and the others attacked, the giant axe suddenly shattered in the void. Han Fei was also stunned. What's going on? Then, the heavenly crystal's claw attack and the Beast King's Beast King art all dissipated in the void. Han Fei frowned and found that the 9 poison treasure silkworm continued to devour. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. The Dream Weaver could directly attack the soul in a dream. This strange power was really terrifying. Fortunately, this threatening power was regarded by the 9 poison treasure silkworm as soul poison, so it directly tore it up and swallowed it. Although the 9 poison treasure silkworm had the ability to swallow soul poison, it certainly couldn't go on like this. This was the Divine Palace, and the power here could definitely easily make the 9 poison treasure silkworm fall asleep. Therefore, Han Fei immediately shouted coldly and directly used the power of his soul to stimulate his qi and blood. When his qi and blood rose, Han Fei roared and transformed into a clone with his essence blood. Swish, 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 he only saw Wang Yijian one after another appearing in this place. He didn't know where this place was. Many of the doppelgangers fell into a deep slumber in an instant, but there were also some doppelgangers who instantly discovered that their true bodies were standing on a piece of land. Some clones saw a palace shrouded in mist. All of a sudden, thousands of clones appeared, some activating the nautical multitude, and some activating the infinity water. The infinity water turned into a sword shadow in the void, cutting straight through the mist. Rumble! A terrifying explosion swept across the entire divine palace. God knew how many weird psychedelic arrays it had to crush. Swish! Han Fei's thousands of projections all returned in an instant. No matter what kind of dream-weaving power the Dream Weaver had, it was still a kind of energy, an application of a kind of great Tao. These illusions were shattered, and the world seemed to be restored to clarity. Whoosh! In the violent power, Han Fei's body was as steady as a rock. As he slowly opened his eyes, he saw what this so-called Dream Weaver Divine Palace looked like. He saw that this place was shrouded in mist, and in the mist, a palace that seemed to be made of white mist stood on the land of the Divine Palace. Right in front of the palace, 2 monsters 100 meters tall, twisted like nightmares, suddenly lunged at him. Han Fei felt the stinging of his mind, only to find that the raging storm couldn't shake the mist palace or the 2 monsters. He looked down at his feet and the sky, and reached out to feel the remaining power of the infinity water in the void. Han Fei heaved a sigh. Nothing new. The 3rd level of illusion? When Han Fei was about to kill the 2 monsters with the heavenly god stab, he suddenly heard the Emperor Sparrow's voice in his head. Let me do it. Too much soul filth has been accumulated here, and it's become a nightmare. If Little Black and Little White don't come out, you'll be trapped in an infinite illusion. Huh? A nightmare? Seeing that the Emperor Sparrow took the initiative to fight, Han Fei didn't have to worry about it. The center of his eyebrows flashed, and a giant black eagle spread its wings in the sky. The Emperor Sparrow's eyes were bloodshot, and the void behind him was broken. A giant claw broke through the void with boundless black mist. The entire small world of dream-weaving sky was instantly full of cracks. It was just a thing that looked like a giant black claw, but even Han Fei was shocked by its pressure. What's that? The Emperor Sparrow said, the eye of disaster, the arrival of the extraterrestrial demon. Han Fei was speechless. Is this the power of a half-king realm cultivator? The extraterrestrial demon couldn't even extend one of its claws. It was obvious how powerful it was. So, this was the correct way to use the Eye of Disaster? But it turned out that the Emperor Sparrow didn't need to extend its claws at all, because the nightmare couldn't move at all under the threat of the giant claw. The enormous body was smashed into pieces by the extraterrestrial demon lord with one slap. Phew, The sound of someone inhaling could be heard coming from the hole in the void. Then, the entire fairyland-like space shattered like glass. Like a storm, a vast expanse of dense fog continuously drilled into the hole in the void. At this moment, the real appearance of dream-weaving sky finally appeared in front of Han Fei. There was a house on a mountain that was 1,000 meters high, but it couldn't be called a palace at all. At this moment, in front of the house, a woman with blood all over her chest was looking at the extraterrestrial demon's claw in surprise. The woman looked awful, and she even panted a little. Is this a real demon? Chapter 1946. Even Han Fei himself was dumbfounded. Although the Emperor Sparrow always talked about heavenly demons and heavenly demons, who knew what heavenly demons looked like? Now that he saw it, he realized that this slap could probably kill a king. However, Han Fei felt that not all heavenly demons were so strong. At least the one that descended with the heavenly Tao Dharma I could be counted as a heavenly demon, right? Dreamweaver's strange dreamscape was almost completely sucked dry. However, the Emperor Sparrow might not be strong enough to completely summon this so-called heavenly demon, so it withdrew its claws and sealed the void after Dream Sky sucked in a bunch of weird smoke. However, as soon as the heavenly demon returned, the Emperor Sparrow said, "I'm going to use this to expand my sea." What? Han Fei was dumbfounded. You've already expanded your sea? What did you do? You haven't done anything yet, have you? You've already expanded your sea after coming out every 8 to 10 years? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Han Fei was dumbfounded, and so was the woman. The woman yelled, "What do you think the dream sky is? Do you think you can do whatever you want when our king isn't here?" Han Fei was taken aback. "You're not Dream Sky?" The woman snorted. "I'm Wan Qingling. Wang Yijian, since you're here, stay. I'd like to see if you can kill me with a single strike." Mist rose from beneath Wan Qingling's feet, and a 1,000-meter-tall figure condensed from mist appeared behind Wan Qingling. It looked like a Dharma body, but it was way too big. Wan Qingling stood proudly in the void and landed on the figure's chest. She made a hand seal and chanted, "Dream Sky opening, Tao Aura descends from the heavens. I will use my body to conquer the heavens." The 1,000-meter-tall figure raised a huge sword that contained mystic enlightenment power. Han Fei sensed the immortal spiritual qi. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. How could there be someone in the Dream Sky who could create something out of nothing like him? Wan Qingling was only at the Pioneer Sea state, but her body was burning as if she were sacrificing herself for the attack of the heaven-opening state. Han Fei's face turned pale with fright. Without hesitation, he held the shattered sword. The immortal spirit qi and fiendish qi began to interweave rapidly. The fiendish immortal qi condensed into a sword and flew towards the sword shadow. Han Fei yelled, "Emperor Sparrow, come back!" However, the Emperor Sparrow chirped and flew up, shouting, "Emperor Sparrow, come back!" Rumble, lightning, and tribulation clouds roiled in the area of 50,000 kilometers around Dreamweaver Sky, causing rumbling thunder and rolling tribulation clouds. The heavenly tribulation had drained nearly half of the power of the huge sword formed from the fog. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "You can do that? Is the Emperor Sparrow competing with Wan for Tao Sparrow?" Wan Qingling didn't expect such a situation to occur. She had sacrificed her physical body to unleash an all-out attack, but half of her power had been snatched away by a half-step monarch realm bird. Seeing this, Han Fei immediately directed the infinity water to the Emperor Sparrow, forming a water barrier that protected the Emperor Sparrow behind it. As for Han Fei himself, he stretched out 2 fingers and the Tao Convergence sword burst out. In midair, the baleful immortal and the huge sword clashed, and a huge ripple that spanned thousands of miles spread out in Dreamweaver Sky. Buzz! The ripples swept across the entire small world where the Divine Palace was, and Han Fei was slightly frightened. He had underestimated the powerhouses of Dreamweaver. She wasn't even Sha Jiming, yet she was able to unleash the power of split the heavens. If not for the fact that half of her strength had been stolen, she would have been severely injured. No wonder it almost became a great omen. So it was her. The terrifying energy swept over, but in front of Han Fei, the Tao Convergence sword was not so weak that it couldn't even block the energy ripples. Therefore, the place where Han Fei was not injured at all. On the D Sparrow's side, the infinity water transformed into a spiral cone and blocked in front of the D Sparrow. Similarly, it withstood the remaining force. However, the collision of power comparable to the heaven-splitting stage had indeed destroyed the dream-weaving Immortal Palace's small world power. Originally, this small world was a spatial rift. If there was a rift, there would be an entrance, and the entrance was the weakest. After being hit by such a force, it was immediately filled with energy. After 3 seconds, the void was torn apart, and the remaining power finally rushed out. Outside the Dream Immortal City, in the sky, Feng Menglong and Chu Mengyan were fighting fiercely. Suddenly, their expressions changed, and they looked at the sky above Dreamweaver Sky in horror. Above the sky, the space was distorted like a bubble that was twisting irregularly. Crack! When a beam of light shot into the sky, the entire sky was illuminated by this beam of light. Chen Guangjiao was shocked. Was it really that powerful inside? How was it already like this? Xian Feng frowned. Han Fei should be fine, right? Since he had come to fight Dreamweaver Sky, he should be very confident. As for Shui Ran and Zhou Qin, who were attacking the Dream Immortal Palace, their expressions changed drastically. Fortunately, they didn't have to attack the Dream Immortal Palace. Just a bit of its power was enough to cause such a scene. How exaggerated would the battle be? Xia Xiaochan and Luo Xiaobai, who were plundering, were also shocked. Zhang Xuanyu said, "What's going on? Why does it look like someone's king's tribulation has arrived?" Lu Renquang said, "It can't be the king's tribulation, right? Look at the energy explosion. It even poked a hole in the sky. Who's passing the king's tribulation like this?" However, Xia Xiaochan said, "Idiot, that's a sign of the king's tribulation. However, in the Divine Palace, there are other forces erupting besides the king's tribulation." Luo Xiaobai said, "Cut the crap. Han Fei has been preparing for this operation for months. Let's take the opportunity to grab more resources." At this moment, the Dream Immortal City was in a mess. Thousands of venerables were fighting in the sky. But most people in the Dream Immortal City could only look at the sky. God knew what was going on. Anyway, it felt like the end of the world was coming. Oh, to be precise, the end of the world had already come. On the Divine Palace, the small world was full of cracks, but it was still far from breaking. At this moment, Wan Qingling had not died. Otherwise, how could Han Fei not know the crack of the heavenly law? But at this time, Han Fei couldn't care too much. There was no one else in this Divine Palace. As long as he killed Wan Qingling, who would know that Wang Yijian was Han Fei? Fuse. When the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, the void lines turned into countless soul thorns, shuttling back and forth. Finally, Han Fei locked on a drop of water attached to the gravel of the mountain. In fact, it was not a drop of water, but essence blood. Seeing that it was locked on, the drop of water was about to transform into a human being, but she underestimated Han Fei's speed. With a flash of golden light, Han Fei had already rushed to her. Immediately, the void lines locked on Wan Qingling, who had only turned into a half-human figure. The 100-beast soul-devouring roar suppressed Wan Qingling, and Han Fei quickly controlled her soul with the void lines. Wan Qingling, who was already weak, was controlled by the void lines in the end. However, even so, Han Fei was still bleeding from his 7 orifices. This person's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Han Fei estimated that according to the ranking of the Pioneer Sea Realm that Han Xian had concealed for himself, this person was at least in the top 20. However, no matter how strong she was, what could she do if she was controlled by Han Fei? With a thought from Han Fei, Wan Qingling appeared in the collapsed house. Xia Zhimeng trusted Wan Qingling to guard the dream-weaving celestial palace. Therefore, Han Fei used Wan Qingling to open the door of the treasure in the mountain. The mountain of the dream-weaving celestial palace exploded, and Han Fei's big hand grabbed from inside. Countless resources were pulled into the sun-moon shell by Han Fei. After taking one, Han Fei threw it to DK and said, "Don't worry and use it. There are plenty of resources." DK responded, "Leave this small world." Han Fei said, "Wait a moment. Let me plunder these resources first." "Wait a moment. DK." After about 10 minutes, DK couldn't help but say, "Hurry up, the heavenly tribulation outside is almost ready." Han Fei took a look and said, "Okay, let's go out now." Han Fei used the draw technique and flattened the broken mountain of the dream-weaving celestial palace. Immediately, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. Then, the whole mountain was taken by Han Fei. There were still some resources inside the immortal palace that he didn't have time to collect. He could only sigh and control Wan Qingling to control the array. With a bang, the dilapidated immortal palace stumbled out of the space gap. When the immortal palace appeared in the sky of dream-weaving sky, Han Fei grabbed Wan Qingling and fled, leaving the place to Quebec. At this point, Wan Qingling was useless. It was time to die. Rumble in the sky. Apart from the dense black clouds and rolling heavenly tribulation, there was also a bright red lightning mark. Under the black clouds, blood rained all over the sky. Wan Qingling, the hidden master of the dream-weaving celestial palace, had died. And Han Fei, who was also Wang Yijian in other people's eyes, was standing proudly in the sky with his hands behind his back. Zhou Chen's eyelids twitched. Luckily, he didn't challenge Han Fei before. Look at his posture. Wang Yijian killed another king in the blink of an eye. Chen Guangjia couldn't help but think, this is so cool. After killing a king, he's still so calm. How enviable! But they didn't know that Han Fei was actually absorbing Wan Qingling's ownerless soul. The third chapter. Ask for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1947. The death of a king meant infinite vitality and ownerless souls for Han Fei. In particular, Wan Qingling was probably in the top 20 of the Pioneer C list. The vitality and soul power he could provide were equal to that of 2 ordinary kings. Rumble. At this moment, Han Fei saw a purple heavenly tribulation falling right at the Emperor Sparrow. The Emperor Sparrow looked like a bird-shaped demon, almost covered in black fog. It spread its wings at the heavenly tribulation and swallowed it. In the eyes of others, it was like a black fog storm was rising above the palace. The heavenly tribulation was absorbed by the storm and flashed purple light from time to time. Han Fei didn't know how to help the Emperor Sparrow. It seemed that the guy didn't need his help at all. He vaguely remembered the scene when the Emperor Sparrow passed the heavenly tribulation last time. It swallowed 6 lightning bolts one by one. That scene was much more powerful than when he passed the heavenly tribulation. Han Fei activated the Gemini Divine Technique. The black fog body opened a void crack and went into Wan Qingling's origin sea. The white fog body stayed outside to protect the Emperor Sparrow. When Han Fei went into Wan Qingling's origin sea, he was stunned. He thought that Wan Qingling's origin sea would be the same as other people's origin sea, filled with mist. However, it seemed that it was not the case. Wan Qingling's origin sea was even more than 2,000 kilometers larger than his, and there was no fog here. Han Fei saw a land in the sea with a radius of more than 30,000 kilometers. There was a town on the land that spanned more than 6,000 kilometers. The buildings in the town were very exquisite, as if there were people living here. Han Fei walked into a random house curiously, only to find that this house had everything he needed, including daily necessities, food, furnishings, and utensils. Except that there was no one here, this house was completely suitable for a family. At this moment, the demon purification pot had begun to absorb the chaotic air here. But Han Fei was very curious about Wan Qingling's origin sea, so he began to wander in this city. From the shops along the street to the residences, to the public facilities, to the greenery, it was exactly the same as reality. After visiting dozens of houses, Han Fei found that the living facilities in them were also different. It seemed that different families lived here. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Old Yuan, I know why the origin sea creates a real environment. But why was there not a single person here? Logically speaking, she can just randomly grab some people from the real world and bring them in, right?" The old turtle said, "Of course not. The origin sea should have been created by your origin sea. Although living beings from the outside world can come in, they don't belong to your origin sea, and they aren't compatible with your origin sea. Therefore, apart from letting them stay in your origin sea, there's actually no meaning to it." "I see." No wonder Han Fei saw that this city had been built. The spiritual energy here was abundant, the earth veins were not bad, and the chaotic qi shouldn't be weak, but there was no one living here. However, Wan Qingling's origin sea gave Han Fei a direction. Was creating creatures the direction of the development of the origin sea? According to what the old tortoise said, the creatures of this world needed to be created themselves, they needed to be compatible with their own sea of origin. Although his origin sea was like an immortal realm, and all sorts of good things were thrown into it, it was still lacking in life, just like Wan Qingling. In his huge territory, there were only little black, little white, and the nine-tailed mantis shrimp. They swam back and forth in the entire river of spiritual energy every day. However, if a creature could be born in the origin sea, did it mean that the origin sea had undergone a qualitative change? Before Han Fei asked, the old turtle said, "The birth of a creature in the origin sea is a sign of the origin sea. But don't think too much. The creature I'm talking about is not a race like yours. That's too demanding. These creatures are actually very ordinary at the beginning and haven't reached the mark of a powerful race." The sign of the origin sea is the birth of a creature in the origin sea? Han Fei couldn't help but frown. He suddenly had a strange feeling. In other words, in the origin sea, a cultivator was like the Lord of creation, who could become the only god of their own world. If this was how the world came to be, then where did the so-called savage abyss, the current chaotic sea, and the thousands of races in the sea come from? Could it be that they were created by a certain creature? As if knowing that Han Fei would think too much, the old turtle said, "Don't think too much. Someone once calculated that our existence was almost impossible to be created. There are thousands of races, hundreds of millions of miles of vast territory, and countless inventions and creations. If we are really creatures born in someone else's body, how powerful must the creature who created us be?" Han Fei scoffed. "You are not that strong. How do you know?" The old turtle said, "The world we exist in is too complicated, from the birth of the great Tao of heaven and earth to the advancement of the power level, and then to the birth and evolution of countless lives." Han Fei agreed with him. Maybe it was just a cultivator's spontaneous attempt to create a world. It was just a conjecture on the road of cultivation. Except for this empty city, Han Fei didn't find any other special places, but Wan Qingling's origin sea was indeed quite large. Soon, Han Fei found where Wan Qingling stored her resources. However, these resources were less than he thought, less than 500 million ultra-quality spiritual stones in total. Maybe most of the resources were used to shape this coastal area. However, looking at the origin sea that was slowly beginning to fog, Han Fei knew that the chaotic energy here was rapidly decreasing. The demon purification pot was quite powerful. He wondered how much chaotic energy it could bring him this time. After observing Wan Qingling's origin sea for a while, about a quarter of an hour passed. The demon purification pot finally absorbed enough. To Han Fei's surprise, this time, it directly harvested more than 8,000 strands of chaotic energy. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. This was the largest amount of chaotic energy he had ever obtained in one go. It could be described as a massive amount of it. Even when Gongzhan and Li Chaofeng combined didn't have as much chaotic energy as Wan Qingling. It could be seen how much chaotic energy was contained in Wan Qingling's origin sea. When Han Fei fused them into one, he was still extremely shocked. This Wan Qingling was not Sha Jimeng yet. If her foundation was so deep, what about Sha Jimeng? Han Fei couldn't help but think that maybe it was a good thing that Sha Jimeng wasn't here this time. From the power that Wan Qingling displayed, she was actually very strong. If Sha Jimeng was here, and this was her immortal palace, Han Fei might not be able to defeat her. Outside the Sword God Palace, hundreds of large ships were flying in the sky, and dozens of geniuses were fighting a life-and-death battle 10,000 kilometers away. Behind them, on Dreamweaver Sky's ship, there was a woman in a white gauze dress holding a brush that was as tall as a person, and her expression changed drastically. Sha Jimeng suddenly stood up, and her aura couldn't help but erupt. Many people were surprised. The venerables asked, "Palace Master, what's wrong?" A young woman was stunned. "Teacher, what happened?" "Palace Master Dream, I can sense that your aura is unstable." "What happened?" A voice could be heard even from thousands of kilometers away. Sha Jimeng's expression was ugly. "Elder He, please forgive me. I can't participate in this battle. Something happened to me." Just as the two finished their battle, a crack appeared in the heavenly Tao. The expressions of the Grand Pure Palace, the Golden Crow Palace, and the Dragon Subduing Palace all changed drastically. Another king had fallen? From Sha Jimeng's reaction, it seemed that there was something wrong with Dream Sky. On the Grand Pure Palace's ship, an old man said, "Ji Xian, accompany Palace Master Dream Sky." "Yes, Ancestor." While Sha Jimeng was rushing back, the Emperor Sparrow had already gone through 6 heavenly tribulations. He had to admit that the Emperor Sparrow's heavenly tribulation was stronger than his. Han Fei had always thought that his heavenly tribulation was already very terrifying, but after seeing the Emperor Sparrow's heavenly tribulation, he realized that the heavenly tribulation of a true powerhouse could be completely purple. After the Emperor Sparrow swallowed 6 heavenly tribulations, its body seemed to be unable to take it anymore. Thus, it devoured a vast amount of resources in the depths of the Immortal Palace. When the 7th heavenly tribulation descended, Han Fei didn't know how to describe it. He saw a fire phoenix descending from the sky and pouncing toward the Emperor Sparrow. The two bird silhouettes were like 2 powerful primordial creatures, fighting each other amidst the thunder, fire, and black smoke. Anyway, Han Fei had never encountered such a situation before. This heavenly tribulation was probably not easy to deal with. As expected, after experiencing this heavenly tribulation, Han Fei could clearly feel that the Emperor Sparrow's arrogant black flames had weakened a lot. However, the Emperor Sparrow wasn't stupid. It released all the resources that Han Fei had thrown at it and surrounded its body. From within the Immortal Palace, there was also a vast amount of energy spiraling up to protect its body. The 8th heavenly tribulation was attacked by the shadow of a dragon. It was also another fierce battle. Anyway, even Han Fei couldn't see what was going on. First, there was a phoenix, then there was a dragon. The Emperor Sparrow was just going through a heavenly tribulation. Why were there so many strange heavenly tribulations? As for the Emperor Sparrow's heavenly tribulation, Han Fei really couldn't help it at all. He even felt that the Emperor Sparrow was a freakishly talented spiritual beast. It had come with its previous life's memories and was just staying with him for a while. As expected, although the first heavenly tribulation looked terrifying, it was normal after the 9th heavenly tribulation. Han Fei secretly activated his yin-yang divine eye and saw that there seemed to be a black shadow in the purplish-red heavenly tribulation. It was being torn apart and swallowed by the Emperor Sparrow. Oh my, is that a heavenly demon? Chapter 1948. The success rate of the Emperor Sparrow's heavenly tribulation was very high. It seemed dangerous, but after the 9th heavenly tribulation, Han Fei saw a tremendous amount of energy pouring out of the dream-weaving deity palace and into the Emperor Sparrow's body. Han Fei thought that the Emperor Sparrow must be developing its own origin. Since the Emperor Sparrow had become a king and could keep up with his cultivation speed, Han Fei wondered if his combat ability would soar after fusing with the Emperor Sparrow. Of course, under normal circumstances, it was better to fight on his own if he could. A fellow like the Emperor Sparrow would be a good choice as a trump card. It had been more than 2 hours since the siege began, and less than half an hour since Wan Qingling had died. Han Fei estimated that they had to retreat in about 2 hours. Otherwise, if the strong cultivators of the other dream-weaving deity palace arrived and were stalled, the consequences would be unimaginable. Speaking of which, Feng Menglong and Chu Mengyan had already started running away moments ago. Wang Yijian had killed Wan Qingling. If they didn't run, they would be killed. Xian Feng and Chen Guangjia naturally wouldn't chase after them. They were here to attack the city. Now that Han Fei had killed a king, why should they chase after the enemy? Why did they ask Shui Ran and Zhou Qin to plunder resources? Since the king had run away, how could the venerables fight with all their strength? Not only that, but some venerables also joined in the robbery. Anyway, the dream-weaving deity palace was in chaos today. Who knew what was going on? Above the dream-weaving deity palace, the Emperor Sparrow seemed to be consolidating its strength. Maybe it had absorbed too many resources. After plundering more resources and swallowing them, the Emperor Sparrow glanced at Han Fei. "I'm going to sleep for more than 10 years. Han Fei nodded slightly. "Don't worry. It'll only take a few months in my origin sea." Swish! The Emperor Sparrow dived into the center of Han Fei's eyebrows. When Han Fei looked at the resources stored in the dream-weaving deity palace, his face turned green. This was similar to the situation in the Avalon of 5 Element. The dream-weaving deity palace still contained a lot of energy. If he stayed here for 3 to 5 years, he could absorb a lot of chaotic energy. But obviously, time waited for no man. Han Fei could only give up with tears in his eyes. However, Han Fei estimated that the 4 pirate groups plus Xia Shaochan must have looted a lot of things, so he didn't lose anything. Maybe he could get some money from the pirate group. Thinking of this, Han Fei smiled. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly saw a flash in the void, and a figure suddenly appeared. Han Fei frowned. Who was it? How dare he swagger around and appear with so many flaws? However, when Han Fei took a closer look, he realized that it was the girl who chatted with him just now. Speaking of which, Meng Guishui's assessment was only halfway through when she suddenly discovered that there seemed to be no more assessment after that. She guessed that it was because her performance was so outstanding that she made an exception and came up. However, when Meng Guishui saw this place that was even more ruined than a ruin, the energy was still raging. Not far away the ground had collapsed, and there was a mountain that seemed to have just been chopped off, with a few cracks occasionally appearing. Meng Guishui thought, maybe this is what the dream-weaving deity palace looks like? However, when she saw the blood rain falling from the void, she scanned with her perception and found that the dream-weaving deity city was right below the dream-weaving deity palace, which made her wonder if she really came to the dream-weaving deity palace. At this moment, Meng Guishui saw a slender figure with fluttering white hair walking towards her in the dense energy storm in the distance. When she saw this person, she was shocked. Isn't this the guy who was staring at the sky in a daze? Why is he here? Han Fei seemed to take only a few steps and came to Meng Guishui. He nodded slightly and said, "Yes. It's a pity that the place you want to come to is gone." Swish! With that, a golden light flashed and Han Fei's figure disappeared from the dream-weaving deity palace. Meng Guishui was left behind, recalling Han Fei's words with a dumbfounded look. The place you want to come to is gone. In the core area of the dream-weaving deity city, the dream-weaving deity palace was the normal way to the dream-weaving deity palace, just like the central holy city of the Yin Yang heaven. But unlike the central holy city of the Inyang heaven, the dream-weaving deity palace was the top academy of the dream-weaving deity palace. There were many treasures and resources hidden here. At this moment, 4 half-king powerhouses were lying under Zhou Qin, and a large pile of sun-moon shells was floating in front of him. Shui Ran also had a pile of them, but Xian Feng and Chen Guangjia were not happy. Chen Guangjia said, "Brother Zhou, Brother Shui, we were fighting against the kings outside, but you took all the resources of the dream-weaving deity palace so easily. You've seen at least half of them, right?" Xian Feng nodded. "Yes." Zhou Qin asked, "You two are here. What about Feng Menglong and Chu Mengshu?" Xian Feng said, "They ran away." Chen Guangjia said, "The main reason is that the kings above have fallen. Brother Yijian killed them. Do they dare to stay?" Zhou Qin and Shui Ran looked at each other and agreed. Once Wang Yijian appeared, if Sha Zhimeng wasn't here, who would dare to stay? Shui Ran said, "We'll split the resources evenly. The one who passed the tribulation up there should be finished, right?" Everyone fell silent. Who could be passing the tribulation at this time? Besides, the heavenly tribulation was horrifying. It was full of purple lightning, and there were purple and red lightning bolts behind it. No ordinary person could withstand any of them. If they hadn't seen Wang Yijian outside the lightning tribulation, they would have suspected that Wang Yijian had become a king. Since it wasn't Wang Yijian, and Han Fei had already become a king, they felt that it might be one of the Avengers. The only one who could make them guess was the mermaid royal family's Royal Highness. Suddenly, they saw Wang Yijian quietly appear. The 4 of them all changed their expressions. Although they didn't see the person who had just passed the tribulation, Wang Yijian was so powerful that they had to be careful. Han Fei said, "Withdraw the troops and leave with the Avenger." Xian Feng nodded. "Okay. I guess the people from the other palaces will be here soon." Chen Guangjia nodded. "Yes, we can't stay here for long. Otherwise, if we are delayed, the consequences will be unimaginable." Zhou Qin and Shui Ran also nodded. The 4 of them disappeared with a swish, and then the king's order resounded in the dream-weaving sky. Chen Guangjia said, "Gale pirates, gather and leave with the Avenger pirates." Chen Guangjia understood Wang Yijian's words very well. Obviously, Han Fei and the 4 palaces of the Sword God were allies. The 2 sides were close, and Han Fei didn't ask the 4 pirate groups to come here just to rob a palace. Who would give benefits to him for free? Looking at the current strong state of the Avenger pirates, they might be able to unify the top 10 pirate groups in the future. If so, the Avenger pirates would not be comparable to ordinary forces, and they might become another superpower in the chaotic vast sea. Hearing the order, Luo Xiaobai and the others were about to leave together. Suddenly, the Avenger pirate ship appeared in the sky out of thin air. On the deck, Han Fei's white hair fluttered in the wind, and he ordered, "Avenger, retreat." Swish, 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 the void was torn apart, and one strange creature after another broke out of the void. These were naturally the crew of the Avenger. For example, the Insect King had revealed its original form and fought fiercely with people. It had already defeated 3 half-king realm powerhouses in a row. However, it only blew them up, not killed them. This was what Han Fei told them before he came. Although Han Fei said he was attacking the dream-weaving sky, in fact, whether it was the dream-weaving sky or any other day, or even the Grand Purity Palace, some things had nothing to do with venerable powerhouses. After all, these people were the foundation of the human race. If they could avoid losses, they should try to avoid losses. However, in this kind of battle between venerables, it was impossible to hold back. In a situation where they were evenly matched, of course, the enemy would die, which was the norm. After everyone returned, Han Fei found that there were still 2 people who hadn't returned. One was a tree demon from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, and the other was a black goat from the Demon Beast Alliance. When Han Fei probed the void with his perception, He finally found the shattered flesh and blood of the two people in the void. Han Fei's expression didn't change at all. He had already said that this trip was extremely dangerous, and there were many experts outside. When he couldn't take care of them, it was very likely that they would die. This was normal. For example, Chu Linyuan was also heavily injured, and Su Sanxian was riddled with holes. However, they had the protection of their own people from the Thug Academy, so they were fine. Swish, swish, swish. When the ships broke through the void and left, Han Fei didn't leave a sound here like last time. This was because there was no need to leave a sound at all. The Avenger pirates robbed the most fiercely. How could anyone not see it? The battle lasted for 2 whole hours. There were kings who died, and there were people who underwent tribulation. The immortal palaces were reduced to ruins, and their resources were all plundered. Hundreds of supremacies died. How could any immortal palace bear such a heavy price? In less than 4 hours, Dragon Subduing Sky, which was closest to the Dream-Weaving Sky, had sea expansion experts come, but they didn't dare to enter. Dragon Subduing Sky only came to help. From afar, they saw that the battle had ended, so they greeted Feng Menglong and Chu Mingxue and stayed behind to take care of the situation. When it was almost 4.5 hours, a figure suddenly descended from the sky. This person was powerful. He was the white-haired old man who had gone to the Grand Purity Palace to visit the Medicine King Heaven. When the white-haired old man saw this, his expression immediately turned cold. What a crazy Han Fei! What an arrogant Wang Yijian! Chapter 1949. Even with Xia Zhiming and Ji Xian rushing at full speed, it took them a day and a half to return to Dream-Weaving Sky. When Xia Zhiming saw the ruins of the Immortal Palace floating above Dream Immortal City, her mind went blank. Most of the important places in Dream Immortal City had been destroyed. The Dream Immortal Palace was basically destroyed. Smoke and debris were everywhere. Ji Xian couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Who did this? Xia Zhiming couldn't care less about what had happened to Dream Immortal City. She took a step forward and landed on the Immortal Palace. She shouted, "Feng Menglong, Guixue, what happened?" Feng Menglong and Chu Mingxue appeared on the Immortal Palace at almost the same time as Xia Zhiming. Their expressions were ugly. Chu Mingxue said, "Palace Master." This was a well-prepared operation. The Avengers, along with the Gale Pirate Group, the Scarlet Fire Pirate Group, the Misfortune Pirate Group, and the Demoness Pirate Group, have joined forces to attack my Dreamweaver Sky. Wang Yijian alone broke into the Immortal Palace and killed his way in. The two of us could only watch helplessly as Ancestor Qing Ling fell. Ji Xian was shocked. The top 10 pirate groups were starting to band together? 5 pirate groups meant 5 kings. Adding Wang Yijian, how could they deal with that? How could a reclusive expert like Dream-Weaving Sky stop them? Xia Zhiming gritted her teeth. "You're saying it was Wang Yijian?" Feng Menglong said, "It was him." "Palace Master, look." Feng Menglong pointed at a formation that was still in operation. Golden words appeared on the formation. "Those who offend the Sword God's palace will be killed. Those who collude with the everlasting pure realm will be killed. If Dream-Weaving Sky dares to offend them again, they will be wiped out." This message was filled with a strong sense of warning. Xia Zhiming's eyes turned red. What big words! Wang Yijian, Han Fei. This king wants to see how you will wipe out Dream-Weaving Sky. Xia Zhiming exploded with anger. Ji Xian comforted her. "Palace Master Dream, once the everlasting realm succeeds, the everlasting pure realm will join forces to fight the enemy. What can the 4 palaces do? At that time, both Han Fei and the 4 palaces of the Sword God will become dust in history." Xia Zhiming's expression was ugly. "Ji Xian, you saw the situation. Although I'm not afraid of Han Fei and Wang Yijian, the Dream-Weaving Heaven is in such a situation. Even my immortal palace has been destroyed. How can I be distracted and come to the battlefield again?" "Mengxue, Palace Lord, I'm here. Sha Ming said. Go to the Sword God Palace battlefield for me, and show them my determination. I will stay here and wait for that villain Wang Yijian to come and wipe out my Dreamweaver sky. However, Ji Xian knew that Sha Zhimeng wouldn't send any more troop. Just as she said, letting Chu Mingxue go was just to show her determination. In terms of strength, Ji Xian knew that he couldn't teach Sha Zhimeng a lesson. In fact, he knew that he was slightly weaker than Wan Qingling. And now, Wan Qingling had died in battle, and Wan Qingling was Sha Zhimeng's teacher. One could see how deep Sha Zhimeng's hatred was. Thus, Ji Xian could only cup his hands and say, since Palace Lord Dream has made up your mind, Ji Xian will report to the ancestor. I believe the ancestor will not sit idly by. Palace Lord Dream, wait for a year and a half. When the Imperial Palace opens, it will be the time when the Sword God Palace and the Yin-Yang Sky fall. At the same time, on the vast sea, more than 10 pirate ships broke through the void one after another. Finally, along with the Avenger, they drilled into an area that was not part of the sea route. At this moment, as the Avenger stopped, the kings were actually surprised that Han Fei didn't appear from the beginning to the end. They saw Han Fei standing on the deck of the Avenger in the form of Wang Yijian. His voice was cold. Not bad. The 4 palaces will have to hand over 30% of the resources they plundered. Any objections? How could Chen Guangjia and the others dare to object? They originally thought that they would have to hand over at least 50% of the plundered resources, but it was only 30%. This was already far beyond their expectations. After all, they were only here because of Han Fei's coercion. It could be said that ever since the fall of the 4 crazy kings, Han Fei had become the new 4 crazy kings. No, Han Fei was even crazier than the 4 crazy kings. Would the 4 crazy kings dare to break into the Avalon of 5 elements? Would the 4 crazy kings dare to attack the Dreamweaver sky? They wouldn't dare even if they had 10 guts. Xian Feng knew that Wang Yijian represented Han Fei, so 30% of the palace lord's filial piety wasn't much. Xueran, Chen Guangjia, and Zhou Chen couldn't wait to throw a large pile of sun-moon shells to Wang Yijian, afraid that he would go back on his word. For example, Chen Guangjia's initial goal was to plunder 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones, and the probability of that was not high. But now, he had at least 500 to 600 million. Even if he threw out 200 million, he would still make a net profit of 400 million. As for Zhou Chen, in fact, he didn't think he could succeed this time, because he was famous for his bad luck. It was normal that he failed to plunder. But this time, he plundered 700 to 800 million at once, which was like a pie falling from the sky. Not to mention Xueran, because he was ranked last, this time was the most he had ever plundered in his life. Han Fei waved his hand and put away the sun-moon shells, then said lightly, I think I don't need to tell you how much effort you have put into this trip. Chen Guangjia smiled and said, Brother Wang, Old Chen, will definitely remember this favor. If Brother Wang has any requests in the future, I will definitely send them to you. If you have any orders in the future, I dare not disobey. Xueran and Zhou Chen looked at each other, then nodded their heads in agreement. They were not fools. Of course, they knew that Han Fei and Wang Yijian had other plans. Wang Yijian said, In about a year, the Savage Abyss and the Yin-Yang Sky will appear. At that time, the world will be turbulent and you should know where you are. I don't ask you to participate in the war, but at least you have to show your attitude and know where you stand. If necessary, you will not hesitate to take action. All of a sudden, Zhou Chen and the others' hearts skipped a beat. This money was too hot. To be honest, if possible, the 3 of them wanted to give all the resources in their hands to Wang Yijian. As long as they didn't lose the war, they would do anything. But obviously, Wang Yijian wouldn't give them this chance, nor would Han Fei. The 3 of them couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Zhou Chen paused and said, How can the few of us resist the 36 immortal palaces? At this time, Luo Xiaobai stood out from behind Wang Yijian. Luo Xiaobai said, "Seniors, do you think that the 36 immortal palaces will mobilize all their forces? With the Avalon of 5 elements and the dream-weaving sky as examples, who would dare to act rashly?" Chen Guangjia couldn't help but frown. "Little girl you are?" Luo Xiaobai didn't lose to them. She used to be a general and was cold by nature, so she wasn't afraid at all. She said, "My words can represent Han Fei's." Chen Guangjia and the others frowned, wondering who she was talking about. Shouldn't Han Fei already have a princess of the mermaid royal family? Where did he find his little lover? Why did she sound so tough? Luo Xiaobai said, "When the time comes, there won't be many who really dare to fight. If there are really a lot of people, there will be a lot of people. My request is that you stop the kings of the other immortal palaces." After a pause, Luo Xiaobai said unhurriedly, "Of course, whoever contributes more will gain more than what you have in your hands in the future. It's up to you to choose." Chen Guangjia and the others were relieved to hear this. Therefore, they only needed to take a stand. If the war really started, they only needed to stop the kings of the other immortal palaces for a while. That was easy. The kings of the other immortal palaces wouldn't dare to provoke Han Fei and Wang Yijian even if they were given 100 guts. After today, these two people would definitely be famous in the chaotic ocean. Except for the powerhouses of the inner area, who wouldn't be afraid of them. Therefore, Zhou Chen was the first to respond. In this case, the misfortune pirates agree. Chen Guangjia also clasped his fists and said, "I have no problem with that. It's a deal." Xueran also agreed. The Red Fire Pirates also have no problem with that. Hearing the witch pirates' attitude, Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly. "Please go ahead." As soon as they heard that they could leave, several pirate groups ran away faster than rabbits, saying that they wanted to leave. They immediately left. After all, they didn't want to wait for Han Fei to come back. Han Fei was too impulsive. If they didn't agree with him, they would be killed. When the pirates left, Wang Yijian's figure began to change and in the blink of an eye, he returned to his original appearance. Zhang Xuanyu finally couldn't help but say, "Fei Fei, where did you learn this style? It's so cool." Lu Renkuang asked, "Fei Fei, who's the one transcending the tribulation in the immortal palace?" Xia Xiaochan couldn't help looking at Han Fei curiously. "Yes, a purple heavenly tribulation. Do you have any other trump cards?" Luo Xiaobai couldn't help but look at Han Fei in confusion. Han Fei said, "I'll tell you later. I'm going out first. Wait for me here for a while." Han Fei didn't know how to explain it. Could it be that my second spiritual beast transcended the tribulation and became a king? This speed would probably stun them. After a while, the witch pirates stopped on the route 1,000,000 kilometers away. With a flash of golden light, Han Fei suddenly landed. When Han Fei arrived, he saw that everyone in the witch pirates was counting the resources they had looted. For the witch pirates, the harvest this time was comparable to the harvest of hundreds of years in the past. Han Fei's sudden arrival shocked everyone, and many people hesitated whether to hand over their resources. However, Han Fei then threw a pile of sunmoon shells to Xianfeng and said, "Don't worry about the rest. Just go to the savage abyss and wait. Don't get too close." Xianfeng said, "Master, I haven't seen Yin this time. Where is she?" Yin is in the 9-palace heaven. With a thought, Han Fei threw a jade slip to Xianfeng. "If something happens to me in the future, if you can survive, you can find this place and someone will take you to the 9-palace heaven." Xianfeng was relieved at first, but then her heart tightened again. She said, "Master, the Yin heaven may not necessarily be saved." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. "I have my own plans. See you." When Han Fei turned into a golden light and left, Long Wu couldn't help but say, "Captain, is the person we met a fake palace master? The first time I met him, he wasn't cold and aloof at all. Unlike now, he comes and goes as he pleases, not even leaving a shadow behind." Xian Feng casually threw out all the resources that Han Fei had left. Go count your money. Chapter 1950. The Avalon of 5 elements and the Dreamweaver sky were enough to attack a city and kill a king. Even if Han Fei wanted to continue, no one was a fool. With the Avalon of 5 elements and the Dreamweaver sky as an example, who would dare to fight the Tai Ching Wuji? Who wouldn't transfer all kinds of resources and gather their main forces at home? At least, Han Fei had no chance in the inner domain Immortal Palace. Han Fei also realized that he might have underestimated the power of the inner domain Immortal Palace masters. The inner domain Immortal Palace was divided into the inner domain and the outer domain because everyone had different opportunities and cultivation potentials. Those who were in the outer domain were those who didn't have enough opportunities or had weak Dao. But in the inner domain, a powerhouse who wasn't a palace master could unleash the power of the heaven opening state, which made Han Fei realize that there might be more people who had touched the threshold of the heaven opening state. When Han Fei returned to the Avenger, he looked at Song Kaiyuan and asked, "Do you know who Wan Qingling is?" Hearing this, Song Kaiyuan seemed to understand something. Before he could be surprised, Mushui Sisi said in astonishment, "The one who died was Wan Qingling?" Song Kaiyuan immediately came back to himself. Wan Qingling ranked 9th in the ocean opening state and was Xia Zhimeng's teacher. It's said that she was as strong as Xia Zhimeng. She once fought the 3 kings of the mermaids alone and killed 2 of them. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Ranked 9th. Han Fei was speechless. This ranking was higher than he had imagined. No wonder she was so powerful. Fortunately, Emperor Sparrow had stolen half of her heaven-opening state power. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. However, Wan Qingling's death was a good thing. At least it proved that his side was strong enough to slaughter the top 10 in the ocean opening state. Anyone who wanted to attack the 4 palaces of the Sword God and the Yin-Yang Heaven would have to consider their own strength first. Of course, Wan Qingling's death would definitely offend Xia Zhimeng. However, was Han Fei afraid of offending anyone? Obviously not. Otherwise, how would he dare to go against the Tai Ching Wuji? Origin C. For the first time, Han Fei took Luo Xiaobai and the others out of the island. When they saw Han Fei's Origin C for the first time, they couldn't help but exclaim. Zhang Xuanyu said, Is this really the Origin C? Are you sure it's not your treasure vault? Lu Renquang said, Wow! I saw a spiritual orchard over there. Oh my God, it's really full of spiritual fruits. There are as many as 100,000 of them. Xia Xiaochan asked, What's that river? A river completely made up of spirit spring? How much spirit spring would that be? Luo Xiaobai was also speechless. In just a moment I've sensed no less than 10 spiritual veins. Is the accumulation of the Origin C so extravagant? Among them, Xia Xiaochan was the only one who had seen the world, but Han Fei's Source C was too amazing. To put it bluntly, if the resources of the Origin C were to be poured out, even 10 billion supreme-grade spirit stones would not be enough. Some rare things simply could not be measured by the best quality spirit stones. Han Fei said, My exploration of the Origin C is not very clear yet. However, there is one thing I can clearly tell you. The strength of a sea expansion expert is closely related to the size of the sea expansion realm, the amount of primal chaos chi within the sea expansion realm, and how similar the sea expansion realm is to the real world. I have an inference that with the current quality of my Origin C, if it continues to expand to 100,000 kilometers, I should be able to open the sky. Wow, even Luo Xiaobai took a breath. According to your standard, 100,000 kilometers? Everyone's face turned green. Is it so difficult to open the sky? If Han Fei's standard was used, how many immortal palaces would they have to rob? Originally, they were very satisfied with the harvest of this looting. Each of them got tens of millions of resources, but now it seemed 4 cultivators of the Pioneer Sea realm, This was just a drizzle. Han Fei also frowned and said, I also think it's a bit strange. Cultivators need too many resources. If a king needs so many resources to open the sky, how many kings can open the sky in this chaotic ocean? However, as soon as Han Fei said this, he heard the old turtle remind him, I think you are overthinking it. Although the origin sea should be in line with reality as much as possible, your origin sea is not very suitable for reality. There are few places in reality that can reach the level of resources in your origin sea. You can say that your origin sea is full of treasures. Han Fei said, Don't interrupt. Although the chaotic ocean is good, in ancient times, when resources were abundant, my origin sea was just a small place at most. Since we are going to take the strongest path of sea expansion, how can we be conventional? Han Fei ignored the old turtle's suggestion and casually suggested, Anyway, you just need to know this. As for how many resources you can get, that's a matter for later. Besides, in the next year, I will adjust the cultivation time here. You've been stuck at the peak level of the Venerable Realm for so long, and it's time for you to break through to the Half-King Realm. Otherwise, when we go to the Imperial Palace, there won't be many experts below the Half-King Realm. Luo Xiaobai and the others were shocked. It made sense. It was indeed too much for them to think about what would happen after the Sea Expansion Realm. In this day and age, those who could open the Sea Expansion Realm were already standing at the peak of this world. Even in the chaotic ocean, how many Sea Expansion Realms could there be? Luo Xiaobai asked. Our breakthroughs are fine, but what about Xiaochan's? Han Fei's heart sank. Xiaochan's breakthrough had to be made by the Mermaid Royal family. The previous agreement with Chun Huangyan was that the Mermaid Royal family would help the Yinyang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven block the Grand Pure Wuji. But now, the Wuji Heaven was clearly waiting for the Imperial Palace to open before they sent the Yinyang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven out to force Han Fei. Han Fei thought of something. Just focus on cultivation and prepare to break through to the Half-King Realm. I have my own arrangements for the girls' tribulation. Suddenly, Zhang Xuanyu said, By the way, Han Fei, who was the one who had a tribulation in the dream-weaving sky? Han Fei paused. You'll know later. Asking Zhang Xuanyu and the others to go back to cultivate, Han Fei teleported 10,000 kilometers away and appeared next to the demon purification pot. On the fifth vine, the second pill that Han Fei had been cultivating changed after this trip to the dream-weaving sky. With his massive supply of resources, the second pill was finally about to mature. Han Fei couldn't help but be a little excited. Seeing that the second pill was red and seemed to be mature, Han Fei felt that maybe it was time for him to go through the tribulation. One day later, in the Mist Sea, somewhere off the sailing route, a man and a gourd stood in midair. Tribulation clouds were rolling in the sky, which was a sign of the arrival of the pill tribulation. With a thought, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold, Simp Dog, Little Fatty, Little Black, and Little White appeared around him. Han Fei said, With me as the range, kill any powerful creatures that try to invade within 10,000 kilometers. It was almost impossible for the demon purification pot to fail the pill tribulation. If a mere pill tribulation could break the demon purification pot, would it still be the gourd that Han Fei knew? Rumble! When the first pill tribulation fell, Little Black had already started to take action. After all, this was the Mist Sea, where there might be a large number of powerful creatures. Little Black immediately discovered and killed a high-level Venerable Realm crab. Then, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp activated the void chains, and two middle-level Venerable Ferocious Black fish were nailed to the chains. After all, pills of this level might also be very attractive to these marine beasts. However, Han Fei didn't care about those ordinary venerable attackers. When the sixth tribulation arrived, a behemoth finally appeared in Han Fei's perception. It was said that the giant beasts only wandered in the non-sailing route. This behemoth turned out to be a huge manta ray. It was undoubtedly in the Pioneer Sea state. Han Fei couldn't tell how strong it was, but it was destined to be killed by his saber. Its flesh and blood would irrigate his sea of origin. The manta ray looked at Han Fei in the void and hesitated for a moment, but it still couldn't resist the temptation of the second divine pill. It opened its big mouth, which was like a huge black hole hundreds of kilometers wide. Han Fei roared coldly, "You're courting death." With a golden flash, Han Fei tried to cross the boundless suction force and appear on the back of the manta ray. However, Han Fei felt that even the void was twisted by this jump, and he couldn't escape the suction force of the manta ray. At that moment, Han Fei directly performed the strongest state of the golden light movement technique and dove into the river of time, avoiding the suction force. Finally, he appeared on the back of the manta ray. In the next moment, information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Sea Demon Bat. Introduction: This is a behemoth that lives in the depths of the sea demon bat. It swims all its life and grows up by devouring everything it sees. Its suction force can disrupt the void and extinguish light. Whoever is swallowed will fall into an endless void that belongs to the sea demon bat. Tiny bone spurs can grow out of its flesh and blood, which are extremely poisonous and should not be touched lightly. Level 92 Quality: Ancient Mutant Realm Pioneer Sea contains chaotic energy greater than 5,649 wisps. Battle Techniques: Fatal Swallowing, Dark Devil Divine Thunder, Star Mark Poisonous Stinger, Ultimate Demon Wings, Collectible Demon Bone, Sea Mottled Poison, Ultimate Demon Wings, Absorbable. Remarks: The sea demon bat's defense is extremely strong. Ordinary attacks can't break its defense. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1951. After reading the information of the deep ocean demon bat, Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. Since this bat's swallowing power couldn't catch him, how could it snatch the second divine pill? Han Fei roared, "Since you're here, there's no need to leave." The deep ocean demon bat was obviously taken aback too. It thought that this human couldn't run away under its absolute swallowing power. Who would have thought that with a flash of golden light, this fellow would appear on his back? Seeing that the situation was not good, the deep ocean demon bat immediately mobilized all the power in its body, and a green lightning bolt darted at Han Fei. Its power was so terrifying that Han Fei's body was slightly paralyzed. Also, in his soul, the 9-poison treasure silkworm began to spontaneously swallow part of the power in the lightning bolt. Han Fei roared, "Bastard, go to hell!" Han Fei formed a fist seal, activated the Great Path, and his combat power soared. He punched the back of the sea demon bat with all his strength. Thud, crack, crack, crack. However, where Han Fei stood, the ground within a radius of dozens of kilometers collapsed, and the sound of bones breaking echoed incessantly. The enormous deep ocean demon bat fell to the bottom of the sea, and the waves and currents surged for tens of thousands of kilometers. The deep ocean demon bat didn't expect that Han Fei would be so strong. It was just AF * King Punch, but he had almost dug his heart out. In order to get rid of Han Fei, the deep ocean demon bat's body seemed to have countless steel needles and bone spurs with a dark green luster. Obviously, they were highly toxic. Swish, 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 clank, clank, clank. Han Fei said disdainfully, "Do you think others are weak just because you're strong? Today, of all the things you shouldn't have done, you shouldn't have come looking for trouble with me. Unity of Tao / Han Fei pointed out with 2 fingers, and the Tao surged out. He shattered the countless steel needles and pierced them into the body of the deep ocean demon bat. The body of the deep ocean demon bat was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. With Han Fei's feet as the center, it spread out for more than 80 kilometers. The body of the sea demon bat was crushed into pieces by Han Fei. However, even so, Han Fei was shocked to find that this guy did not completely collapse. Perhaps it was due to the fact that the demonic ocean bat's defense was relatively strong and its body was relatively big, but the might of his sword had only managed to create a massive hole on the demonic ocean bat's body. However, it did not completely kill him. In other words, this fellow actually completely withstood the Tao coalescence into one sword. This made Han Fei speechless. This was the first time that an ordinary king had been able to take the Tao convergence sword head-on. However, the sea demon bat was also stunned at this moment. It didn't even have time to run away, and was almost collapsed by Han Fei. Just as it came to its senses and was about to flap its wings to escape, it suddenly felt as if its soul had been captured, and a feeling of death struck its heart. Oh no! By the time the Nethersea demonic bat realized that there was something wrong with its soul, it wanted to run, but it was already too late. In terms of soul power, Han Fei was also stronger than this Nethersea demonic bat. At this moment, Han Fei controlled the Nethersea demonic bat to consume its reserves and recover its body. A moment later, when Han Fei controlled the enormous Nethersea demonic bat to return to the place where the Avenger was, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others were all dumbfounded. Master caught such a behemoth just like that? Perhaps because Han Fei caught the Nethersea demonic bat, the venerable state ferocious beasts that tried to besiege this place all ran away. An idea came to Han Fei's mind. He summoned a guy that he hadn't seen for a long time. This person was exactly Ji Chen, who was controlled by Han Fei with the Tao-devouring insect king in the king grave. Ji Chen was only half a king, and it was hard for Han Fei to use him. Because he couldn't use him, Han Fei usually regarded him as a decoration. Now that he had caught a living behemoth whose combat power was much higher than Ji Chen's, it was time for the Tao-devouring insect king to change its host. Han Fei pointed at the center of Ji Chen's eyebrows, and then a green fatworm crawled out of Ji Chen's mouth. The moment the Tao-devouring insect king came out, Ji Chen's eyes gradually recovered from the dullness. Han Fei glanced at him casually. Since you've been asleep for a long time, you can sleep forever. As Han Fei slapped him, Ji Chen was directly crushed by Han Fei before he could even see the world for the last time, and his soul dissipated. The Tao-devouring insect king, on the other hand, crawled into the body of the Nethersea demonic bat along Han Fei. This time, it took about half an hour for Han Fei to re-establish contact with the Tao-devouring insect king. This meant that the Nethersea demonic bat had been controlled by the parasite. Han Fei couldn't help but put away the void lines, and a bright smile appeared on his face. He had not only obtained the second divine pill, but also caught a pioneer sea realm behemoth. What a double blessing! Apart from everything else, the defense of the Nethersea demonic bat was definitely among the top 30 on the pioneer sea list in the chaotic ocean. At this moment, the 8th heavenly tribulation of the second divine pill had just ended. Han Fei saw that a lot of lightning bolts were gathering in the sky, and lightning fires were popping up. In no more than 5 seconds, the 9th lightning bolt fell. At this point, the second divine pill had passed the heavenly tribulation. With a thought, Han Fei put the demon purification gourd back into the origin sea. Just as he was about to enter the origin sea, he looked at the enormous sea demon bat and thought to himself, this thing should be able to turn into a human, right? Otherwise, how was he supposed to stuff such a huge creature into the origin sea? If he wanted to absorb it, he would have to expand the origin sea within a radius of 600 to 700 kilometers. That would seriously affect the speed at which he could absorb and release the origin sea. Fortunately, as Han Fei transmitted his thought, the enormous size of the Nethersea demonic bat began to fade, replaced by a 5-meter-tall, 2-winged, and hollowed chest monster. Han Fei nodded in satisfaction. This time, he summoned the Nethersea demonic bat back to the origin sea. The second divine pill was ripe. When Han Fei stretched out his hand, a small red pill fell into Han Fei's hand lightly. When the second divine pill was ripe and peeled off, a large amount of spiritual energy from the hundreds of millions of ultra-quality spiritual stones where the demon purification pot was located continued to pour into the demon purification pot. The third divine pill began to absorb resources. Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim that this thing was unbelievable. As long as he had enough resources, he could enjoy such super benefits 7 times. The first time was with the golden light movement technique, which made his speed reach the limit. He didn't know what effect the second divine pill would have. Han Fei couldn't wait to swallow the second divine pill. The next moment, he felt that his soul seemed to be pulled into another world. When Han Fei came back to himself, he saw that he was in the middle of the clouds, and in front of him was a super giant that was immeasurably tall. The giant was emitting golden brilliance, and Han Fei was at the height of his waist. When Han Fei lowered his head, he saw that there were waves 10,000 meters high under the clouds, and half of the giant's body was submerged in the water. As Han Fei looked up again, he saw the giant's explosive muscles, the hands that looked like the arms of a dragon, and the faceless face that looked like a Buddha. Han Fei had a hunch that if this thing punched out, even he wouldn't be able to block it easily. Is this the world of laws? Han Fei couldn't help but wonder how much stronger this thing was than the firmament Dharma body. Han Fei still remembered the content of the second divine pill. It was said that one could comprehend the world of laws with his body as the law, his body as the image, and his body as the image. With the 9 heavens above his head and the abyssal sea under his feet, his body was 33,000 meters high, and he could swallow all images into his true form. After marveling at the magnificence and power of the image, Han Fei couldn't help but sit cross-legged and summon the firmament Dharma body. Perhaps because the world of laws and the firmament Dharma body had an inexplicable resonance, Han Fei felt that the two seemed to be merging when the firmament Dharma body appeared. Yes, Han Fei's eyes were blurred, and gradually he couldn't see anything clearly. However, he seemed to be able to see the vague shadow of a giant again. Han Fei wanted to see the true body of this giant through the fog. However, no matter how hard he tried, he seemed to be in a daze. Until Han Fei felt the feedback from the firmament Dharma body. He seemed to have re-established a connection with the firmament Dharma body. The next moment, Han Fei felt that he seemed to have become another person. He controlled a body that didn't belong to him. This body seemed to be standing in the sea. Han Fei reached out and pushed away the fog. He saw the calm sea and his reflection on the sea. The golden skin, the burly body, and the flawless muscle lines. At that moment, Han Fei felt that he was like an old Buddha. With a wave of his hand, a terrifying power poured out. However, before Han Fei could feel it, he felt that a complicated golden inscription appeared in his mind. Although Han Fei didn't know this word, he vaguely understood it in his mind. The Dharma body didn't adhere to any form. It could be a Buddha, a demon, a giant, or a monster. And the most fundamental state of the Dharma body was himself. So Han Fei looked into the water again and found that what was reflected on the sea was his face. Han Fei realized that the firmament Dharma body, as the first body he cultivated, had been assimilated by the Dharma body. He was now the manifestation of the firmament Dharma body. His Dharma body had swallowed the firmament Dharma body. In addition to this understanding, Han Fei thought of something and his reflection turned into the appearance of 3 heads and 6 arms. As Han Fei thought of something again, he became a demon covered in black flames. When Han Fei shook his head and looked at Han Fei again, it was still himself. At that moment, Han Fei seemed to understand that the so-called Dharma body was the formless Dharma body. His Dharma body, in the eyes of different people, was different. Some people could think that they were Buddhas, and some people could think that they were demons. Whatever they saw was what they saw. And Han Fei knew that he was himself and had never changed. The second chapter. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1952. The magical effect of the second divine pill was to make Han Fei realize that his world of laws had merged with the firmament Dharma body. From then on, he didn't have the firmament Dharma body, only his own Dharma body. When Han Fei's soul returned to reality, he took a deep breath and went out of the source sea with a thought. After coming out, Han Fei tried to summon the firmament Dharma body. With this move, a giant more than 5,000 meters tall appeared behind Han Fei. Han Fei glanced at it. It was indeed not the firmament Dharma body, but an enlarged version of himself. At the same time, his consciousness descended into the Dharma body. Han Fei raised his hand, looked at his palm, looked at his arm, and pinched his muscles. "You're really tough." Han Fei flicked his arm with his finger, only to make a loud clang. Where did this Dharma body come from? Han Fei didn't know why. He could feel that after activating the world of laws, he seemed to have a stronger power than the Dharma body. However, Han Fei really didn't understand the source of this power. Just by guessing, Han Fei could only think that this was the arrival of a kind of heavenly way power, or he had borrowed some kind of indescribable power. As for how strong the combat power he could exert, Han Fei clenched his fist and tried to punch out, but the surrounding void collapsed, and the void cracks cut his body, making clanking sounds. And the power of his punch directly crossed a distance of more than 60,000 kilometers on the surface of the sea, blasting a fist mark on the sea. Wow! It's even stronger than the power of my heavenly way? At this time, the old turtle said, "Look at your huge body. Is it the world of laws?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Old Yuan, you know this?" The old turtle said in surprise, "I've heard of it and seen others use it, but it doesn't seem to be used like this." "That's not how I use it?" Han Fei couldn't help but be taken aback. "Then how do you use it?" The old turtle wondered. "Why don't you stand on the Dharma body and feel it yourself?" Han Fei. Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei suddenly realized something. Yes, whether it was the firmament Dharma body or the world of laws, he had never tried to stand on it. Swish, when Han Fei appeared above the head of the body, before his feet touched it, he somehow felt that he seemed to have established a completely synchronized connection with the body. Unlike before, when his consciousness was separated, he could control both himself and his Dharma idol at the same time. Han Fei punched again, only to find that this punch traveled more than 80,000 kilometers, more than 20,000 kilometers more than before, which was much more than his total power. At this time, the old turtle said, "I've seen people fight like this before. They all fight by standing on their Dharma and combining the power of their Dharma. Different Dharma idols had different levels of power. The power you're unleashing right now doesn't seem to be able to unleash the true power of your Dharma form. How can I exert the full power of the image?" The old turtle said, "I once heard from a devil emperor that although he cultivated the devil avatar, at the end of his cultivation, he and the devil avatar were inseparable. From the moment you completely fused with the devil form, you would truly be in control of your own Dharma form. But it's obvious that you're still far from it." Han Fei couldn't help but think of the saying, "Use the body as the law, the body as the image, and the body as the Dharma form." Did it mean that the body and the Dharma form were inseparable, as the old turtle said? Unfortunately, he knew too little in this aspect and didn't know how to use it. He could only try it out in the future. In short, the most basic benefit of devouring the second divine pill was that he had a super fighter that was stronger than him. And this fighter might even be able to completely fuse with him in the future. At this point, the hunt against Dreamweaver officially came to an end. Han Fei didn't bother with the Dharma body anymore. Although it wasn't as useful as the golden light movement technique, it was probably because he didn't know how to use it yet. When he had the chance to enter the Void Temple again in the future, he had to ask how to use the Dharma world. And now, Han Fei had threatened those that he could, and he couldn't beat those that he couldn't. If he attacked the 36 immortal palaces again, it would be pure foolishness. Han Fei thought for a long time, and with a golden flash, he disappeared into the vast sea. Chaos Heavens. This was an extremely powerful immortal palace that stood apart from the grand pure infinity. The overall strength of the Chaos Heavens was ranked second among the 36 immortal palaces. However, the Chaos Heavens did not conspire with the grand pure infinity. It had a sense of transcendence. The main city of the Chaos Heavens was known as the Primordial Beginning City. The most famous one was the Primordial Chaos Manor, the highest school in the Chaos Heavens. In terms of the Immortal Palace's structure, architectural characteristics, and clothing culture, it was not much different from the other Immortal Palaces. The cultivation of the Chaos Heavens was not focused on body tempering. Its heterogeneity was in no way inferior to the grand pure infinity. All sorts of elites could be born here. It just so happened that Wu Hao, whom Han Fei had previously met, had taken the body tempering path. At that moment, Han Fei's goal was clear. He was here to seek help. The Chaos Heavens was detached from everything, but regardless, he had to give it a try. At the very least, it was not considered his enemy. Above the primordial city, Han Fei deliberately revealed a wisp of his aura. Almost immediately, 3 Pioneer Sea Realm experts appeared high in the sky. Someone smiled faintly. Me. Fellow Taoist, may I know why you suddenly paid a visit? Someone said with a smile, so it's the Lord of Yin-Yang Heaven, fellow Taoist Han Fei. However, I wonder what your goal is in coming to our Chaos Heavens? Another person stood a distance away. His powers at the Pioneer Sea Realm began sealing off his surroundings. With his perception, it was difficult for ordinary people to discover Han Fei. Han Fei said, Junior Han Fei is here to greet the Lord of the Chaos Heavens, Senior Grand Primordial. The 3 monarchs narrowed their eyes. If an ordinary person said that, they would definitely be sent flying out. However, Han Fei was overly arrogant. They had just learned that Dreamweaver had been wiped out by this person. Although the Chaos Heavens never interfered with the matters of the other immortal palaces, they were ultimately humans. They were naturally displeased that Han Fei had caused a civil war among humans. However, as Han Fei was only here as a projection, the 3 monarchs knew that killing him was pointless. They would not attack, but how could the palatial lord be met so easily? Just as one of them was about to chase him away, a voice sounded. Let him in. The 3 monarchs were slightly taken aback. Although they were displeased, one of them said, Forget it. Since the palatial lord is willing to meet you, go ahead. With that said, a teleportation array appeared in the void. Han Fei smiled and walked in without any hesitation. The void flashed as the scene in front of Han Fei changed. Billowing waves of heat inundated him. The immortal palaces in the Chaos Heavens seemed to be incinerating the sun's essence fire. The heat was even stronger than the Yin-Yang Heaven that was enveloped by the heavenly Tao Dharma Eye. In the midst of the flames, a stocky white-haired elder was naked. He was coiled on a red-hot rock that looked like a soldering iron. He could not sense any aura of an expert from him, but at a glance Han Fei knew that he was the Lord of the Chaos Heavens, Grand Primordial. Han Fei took a step forward and stood 100 meters in front of Grand Primordial. Then, he cupped his hands and said, Greetings, Senior Grand Primordial. The elder sized up Han Fei with his eyes wide open. His voice was loud and clear. Unfortunately, your true body isn't in the future. I heard that your body is extremely strong. You managed to attain an indestructible golden body at the Pioneer Sea Realm. You even gave Wu Hao some pointers. I've read your insights. Not bad. Han Fei said, Senior, you flatter me. I've long heard that Senior's body refinement is the best in the chaotic ocean. I think you will only be stronger. Grand Primordial nodded noncommittally. Okay, you're welcome. Speak. What's the matter? Han Fei said, I want to make a deal with Senior. Tell me about it. Han Fei said, Senior Grand Primordial, since the age of Dharma decay, the human race has not been able to step out of the chaotic ocean, right? Grand Primordial nodded. Yes. From what you said, the thing that Han Guanshu planned to make has been completed. Han Fei was slightly taken aback. Why does everyone know about it? However, He still nodded. It's done. As long as I want to, I can leave the chaotic ocean at any time. Grand Primordial said, this deal of yours is quite attractive to me. However, it's not enough for me to stand on your side and deal with Grand Purewuji. As long as I stand on your side, the two sides of the human race will be evenly matched. If civil strife breaks out, the 100 Demons clan, the seabed human race, and the mermaid royal family will take advantage of it. Han Fei thought to himself, Grand Primordial knows the situation very well. He knows why I came here and has come to a conclusion. Han Fei was silent for a moment and said lightly, in this case, I have nothing to say. I'm leaving. Originally, Han Fei just wanted to give it a try. He was not fully confident. After all, this Grand Primordial old man was different from others. He was a heaven-opening state powerhouse. His lifespan was much longer than that of a king, so he didn't have to fight with other emperors. Hearing Han Fei's words, Grand Primordial smiled and said, you really don't know how to persist. Although I refused, why didn't you persist? Han Fei. Han Fei smiled bitterly. Senior, you see the situation very clearly. What else can I say? The civil strife of the human race was caused by me, but since the human race was divided into 36 Xiantian heavens, it has actually become a plate of loose sand. In troubled times, we should unite and reorganize the human race. Since you don't want to fight, I have my own way to deal with it. I can still fight Grand Purewuji, but it will take me more time. Ha ha ha. Interesting boy, you're young but quite arrogant. Including Grand Purewuji, and apatheicized state, there are 3 heaven-opening state powerhouses. You have a sword god on your side. I can't figure out why you are so confident. Is there a heaven-opening state powerhouse in your 9-palace heaven? Han Fei smiled and said, no, it's just that Senior and that Grand Purewuji may have underestimated my potential. Grand Primordial couldn't help but say, good boy, you're really arrogant. Do you mean it's not difficult for you to open the sky? Han Fei smiled and said, it's not difficult to tell the truth. The 3rd chapter. Please vote end of this chapter. Chapter 1953. Since Han Fei dared to say that the heaven-opening realm was not difficult, it was because he had already figured out the cultivation method of the sea expansion realm. To put it bluntly, because of the demon purification pot, he had a clear progress hint for the cultivation of the sea expansion realm. If he continued to cultivate according to his current strength, if his origin sea reached 100,000 kilometers, he would definitely be the first in the sea expansion realm. Hearing Han Fei's words, Tai Yuan couldn't help but take a deep look at Han Fei. Although Han Fei didn't look like a good person at present, he wouldn't deny Han Fei's talent. As a junior, it was really rare for Han Fei to do what he did. How many years had it been since Han Fei became a king? The only thing he lacked was time. However, this was not a reason for Tai Yuan to help him. Tai Yuan said simply, kid, you're a bit interesting. But the Chaos Heavens has never cared about these messy things. Since you have the confidence to fight Tai Chiwuji, you can fight for it yourself. But I also want to use your navigation instrument, so I'll give you some extra help. Han Fei's heart stirred. He didn't expect Tai Yuan to be so easygoing. Han Fei said, I'm all ears. Tai Yuan said, when the time comes, if too many human forces are involved in the battle between you and Grand Pure Infinity, it will definitely cause trouble for the 100 demons and the seabed human race. I can take action and suppress these people, giving you and Grand Pure Infinity a fair and pure fighting environment. As for who wins and who loses, I don't care. With that, Tai Yuan waved his hand and a teleportation array appeared beside Han Fei. He said, in this case I won't help you. I'm helping the human race. If you don't die, we will meet again in the future. Han Fei thought, that's not bad. Han Fei originally wanted to lead the kings of the immortal palaces to resist the 100 demons and the seabed human race. Anyway, most of these people wouldn't participate in the battle, so they naturally wouldn't let go of a chance to restrain the 100 demons and the seabed human race. After all, the major immortal palaces of the outer realm didn't want to get involved in the battle between Yin Yang Heaven and Grand Pure Infinity. What Han Fei was doing now was just to prevent the other major immortal palaces from getting involved. In that case, only the Taiqing Wuji and a few other families would take the initiative to attack the Yin Yang Heaven. It was much better than the entire 36 Xuantians attacking the Yin Yang Heaven. Junior bids farewell. 3 months later. Out in the sea, the Avengers were on a public route to the Savage Abyss. On the deck, Han Fei said to Luo Xiaobai and the others, "In a few days, the Yin Yang Heaven or the Waterwood Heaven will appear. At that time, anyone below the Sea Expansion Realm would be useless. So, you guys don't have to fight for now." Luo Xiaobai frowned and said, "No. If even the Venerables don't have to fight, wouldn't you be the only one left to face the entire limitless heavens?" Xia Shaochan also said, "That's right. Even Venerables can't go up. Doesn't that mean that when the time comes, it'll all be king tiers or even heaven-opening state powerhouses? How can there be so many kings in the chaotic Azure Sea?" Zhang Xuanyu shouted, "Fei Fei! At such a critical moment, how can we sit back and watch you face such a crisis alone?" Lu Renquang nodded. "At least, we'll be together, so this trip won't be in vain." Han Fei sighed slightly. "Okay. Then I'll wait and see. If there's a battle between the Venerables, I'll let you come out. Let's see how powerful Bei Luochen can be to take down the entire Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven." Luo Xiaobai nodded and asked, "How long until the Imperial Palace opens?" Han Fei smiled slightly. 1 year. Huh! Luo Xiaobai and the others were surprised. Didn't the limitless heavens control the time well? Why did they release the Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven in 1 year? Han Fei said with a smile, "The limitless heavens certainly don't want the cage of the Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven to break so early, but he is just an emperor, and he is not the only emperor in this world." Xia Shaochan couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. "Did you go to King Wu?" The only person Xia Shaochan could think of was King Wu. Only with the intervention of the Martial Emperor City could the Yin Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven be released in advance. Han Fei grinned. "Anyway, the Martial Emperor City still owes us 2 things. It would be a waste not to use them." 3 days later. In the depths of the desolate abyss, Bei Luochen sat cross-legged above the abyss and cultivated. There was only 1 year left before the Imperial Palace opened. According to his calculations, in about 8 months, the seal of the Yin Yang Heaven could be gradually broken. When the seal was lifted, Han Fei would die if he came. If he didn't, the limitless heavens would kill and collect the Yin Yang Heaven water. No one dared to talk nonsense. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the void. When Bei Luochen took a closer look, who else could it be but King Wu? Bei Luochen narrowed his eyes and said, "King Wu, are you here to intervene in the battle between the Yin Yang Heaven and the limitless heavens?" King Wu smiled faintly. "You should know that the Martial Emperor City will agree to 3 things for Han Fei after he completes the Martial Emperor's inheritance trial." Bei Luochen's face turned cold. The 3 things that the Martial Emperor City promised to help Han Fei save 2 immortal palaces? King Wu said indifferently, "Not necessarily, but you're too narrow-minded to threaten a junior with 2 immortal palaces. You're at the heaven-opening stage and you don't dare to fight him? Do you still need to use such despicable means? This king has come here today to break this cage. Do you have any objections?" Bei Luochen's face instantly turned cold. "King Wu, don't you think the Martial Emperor City is too lenient?" King Wu looked at him. "Why, you want to stop me? You?" Bei Luochen said, "So, in the end, Your Excellency King Wu is still on Han Fei's side." King Wu snorted. "So what? Why do I need to explain my actions to you?" Just as King Wu was about to enter the vortex, he heard Bei Luochen say, Your Excellency King Wu, if I'm not wrong, Han Fei has already used the Martial Emperor City twice, right? I'd like to see how he'll use it the third time. If he misses one of these 3 opportunities, I'd like to see what reason the Martial Emperor City has to protect Han Fei. King Wu didn't care about Bei Luoqin's threat and leaped into the energy eye of the savage abyss. In fact, the existence of the yin-yang sky had never been a secret to these big shot. However, because of the yin-yang millstone in the past, the yin-yang sky was as solid as a rock. Even heaven opening stage cultivators couldn't break it. But now, the yin-yang millstone was also running out of power, and its internal structure was greatly damaged. As long as one entered it through projection, they could set up a power that could expand the structure of the cage. If Bei Luoqin could do it, any other heaven-opening stage cultivator could do it. Han Fei had asked King Wu before if he could protect the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven. However, Han Fei had only found out at that time that the Martial Emperor City wouldn't actively help any force. This was the foundation of the Martial Emperor City's establishment in the chaotic vast ocean. Otherwise, if the Martial Emperor City broke this rule, not only would the 36 mysterious heavens want to deal with the Martial Emperor City, but the 100 Demon Tribe, the Merfolk Royalty, and the Underwater Human Tribe would also want to deal with the Martial Emperor City. In particular, the 100 Demon Tribe and the Underwater Human Tribe had long been waiting for the human race to descend into chaos. In the end, when the Martial Emperor City stepped in, the human race fell into chaos. It would be strange if they didn't hate the Martial Emperor City. Of course, this wasn't the main reason for the Martial Emperor City's inaction. If King Wu was afraid of them joining forces, the Martial Emperor City wouldn't have existed in this world. In fact, until now, no one knew the true meaning of the Martial Emperor City's existence. Bei Luoqin couldn't do anything about King Wu's forceful interference. However, he wasn't that angry because he had already guessed that Han Fei would ask the Martial Emperor City to do something. If the Martial Emperor City acted directly, he would immediately give up on this operation. However, it seemed that although King Wu released the yin-yang sky and the waterwood sky in advance, he didn't have any intention of directly interfering. This was already good news. It meant that although King Wu didn't care about his actions, he wouldn't stop him. One day later, rumble all of a sudden, a terrifying sound came from the savage abyss. It was as if a giant beast was roaring in the abyss. Everything within a radius of tens of millions of miles shook. At the same time, countless whirlpools formed in the deep sea. The entrance of the savage abyss suddenly opened. King Wu stepped out on the waves and chose to escape immediately. Even King Wu had to leave the center of this place quickly. Why would Bei Luoqin stay here? Endless energy poured into the savage abyss. The suction force of the entrance was so strong that it could kill a venerable in an instant. 36 immortal palaces. Many monarchs looked toward the savage abyss. Someone said in surprise, "Such a big movement? Is the yin-yang sky going to come out?" Someone was puzzled. Why would the Wuji sky let the yin-yang sky and the waterwood sky come out at this time? Isn't it a little early? Someone's face darkened. Let the yin-yang sky and the Wuji sky fight among themselves. Who wins and who loses have nothing to do with me. The 100 demons. A green shark suddenly said, "The human race is finally in internal strife. If this involves the battle of the heaven-opening realm, it will be even more interesting. Let's go and take a look." An elder of the human race at the bottom of the sea opened his eyes. The human race is finally in chaos? It's a pity that this is before the Imperial Palace opens. Let's see how big this battle can be. At this moment, at the edge of the huge whirlpool in the savage abyss, Han Fei felt the crazy suction force and said, "How can we get the immortal palaces out with such a suction force?" Chapter 1954. Yin-Yang Heaven. Xueshenqi was dealing with the spiritual awakening of the new generation here. In today's Yin-Yang Heaven, with the recovery of spiritual energy, the talents of the newborns had improved significantly. The level 3 spiritual heritage had become the most common spiritual heritage, and most of the newborns had a level 4 spiritual heritage. Of course, in this case, the yin-yang heaven would inevitably develop rapidly. As Han Fei expected, the quality of the cultivators of the yin-yang heaven was improving rapidly, but with more and more strong cultivators, the demand for spiritual energy in this world was increasing. Although the overall level of spiritual energy in the yin-yang heaven was several times higher than before, because of the disappearance of the enemies and the supply of spiritual energy, the number of cultivators who could become hanging fishers was also more than 10 times higher than before. The number of cultivators who could reach the level of hanging fisher was also more than 10 times higher than before. However, more and more energy was supplied at the cost of the cracks in the cages. Until this year, the number of cracks in the cages was 3 times more than when Han Fei left. This was the case in the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven. And in the waterwood heaven, just a few years ago, Ma Yuhun failed his tribulation and died in the king's tribulation. However, when Ma Yuhun was transcending the king's tribulation, hundreds of cracks appeared in the cages, so no one in the waterwood heaven dared to transcend the tribulation. In fact, the situation in the yin-yang heaven was not much better. When Chao Tianji transcended the tribulation and became a king's tribulation, he also caused 70 or 80 cracks in the cages, so no one in the entire yin-yang heaven dared to transcend the tribulation. After reading the latest Spirit Awakening Fluid Supply Plan, Shueishenqi couldn't help but rub his eyebrows, feeling a little annoyed. He didn't know what was going on. Rumble, crack, crack, crack. Bm. Suddenly, the sound of something collapsing descended from the sky. It was an extremely clear, shattering sound, causing many people's expressions to change. Hiss, not good. Shueishenqi's face changed drastically. Then he flashed and stepped out of the sky. Above the sky, there were colorful lights and cracks appeared occasionally. Shueishenqi tried to find Tang Yen and Chao Tianji, only to find that neither of them was there. Shueishenqi quickly calculated the time, and his face turned extremely ugly. The 21st year? He still remembered what Han Fei said before he left. If he left 22 years ago and the cages collapsed, he would come back. Now, why was it stuck for 21 years? At that time, according to Han Fei, there must be something he didn't know at all. Looking at it now, it was obvious that there was a problem with the cage, which made Shueishenqi uneasy. On the Scattered Stars Island, everyone was discussing. Someone said in shock, "What's going on?" The weather suddenly changed, and it doesn't sound like thunder. This sound, could it be? Someone shouted, "Don't talk nonsense. The cage should be able to last for several decades. How many years has it been?" However, that person's voice became less and less confident. The sounds of shattering were too many and too concentrated. In the ears of the crowd, it was like a cracked mirror waiting to shatter at any time. 100 breaths later, he saw that Tang Yen had returned. He glanced at Shueishenqi and said, "The cage is breaking. At the current speed, I'm afraid it won't even last a day." Hiss. So fast? Shueishenqi was stunned for a moment. No one knew what the breaking of the cage meant, but why had Han Fei been looking for a way out for so many years? Shueishenqi didn't dare to think too much. Tang Yen said, "I'm going to the Shuemu heaven." Less than 10 seconds after Tang Yen left, Chao Tianji also returned. Chao Tianji said with an ugly face, "The cage has collapsed, and a massive amount of spiritual energy and energy has formed a storm sweeping over. We must immediately arrange Venerable Realm powerhouses to protect the 36 towns and the 1,000-star city." Shueishenqi's face changed again. "So serious?" Chao Tianji said, "The violent spiritual energy and energy aren't something that ordinary people can withstand. As long as we can resist this wave, when the spiritual energy completely dissipates here, the situation will be much better." At this time, Shueishenqi didn't have any scruples. As soon as the sky curtain opened, Shueishenqi's serious face appeared in the sky curtain. Shueishenqi said, "Attention, everyone, attention, the wall of death is broken, and the violent spiritual energy and energy are sweeping over. Those who are cultivating outside must return to the island as soon as possible. Order the venerables here to immediately go to the 1,000-star city and the 36 towns to resist the energy storm." Half a month later, the Inyang heaven and the Shuemu heaven barely resisted the energy impact caused by the cage breaking this time. But it was also on that day that hundreds of millions of creatures in the Inyang heaven and the Shuemu heaven died in this energy impact. To be able to withstand it, they either adapted to this new environment or made a breakthrough. It was also from that day onwards, the Inyang heaven and the Shuemu heaven were completely connected, and the cage that blocked the two worlds completely disappeared. In the cage, millions of explorers and the venerables of the two worlds began the final all-out battle against the sea demons of Black Blood City. Now that the cage was broken, no one knew where the Inyang heaven and the Shuemu heaven would go in the future, so Black Blood City should be wiped out as soon as possible. One day after this month, suddenly, above the sky of the Inyang heaven and the Shuemu heaven, the sky was torn apart, revealing endless darkness. Then some illusory streamers spread out in the sky. Countless people looked up at the sky, watching the scene of day turning into night, as if the sky had been opened. Even the venerable realm powerhouses were dumbfounded. What was going on? Only Tang Yen and the others were gathered together at this moment. Tang Yen said, "It seems that our entire world is moving." The Life Queen nodded. "Yes, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree has woken up. It's said that the entire space we are in is moving. As for where to move," everyone sucked in a breath. Chaotic Azure Sea? They learned the name Chaotic Ocean from Han Fei. Xiong Chaoshui said, "Didn't Han Fei say that we seem to have a lot of enemies in the outside world?" Jing Er nodded. "Yes, and it's said that they're very powerful. Are we really going to the outside world now?" Everyone couldn't help but look up at the sky, full of worry. Tang Yen said, "In any case, our top priority is to gather everyone immediately. The Cloud Sea Divine Tree is fine. You all live on the same tree. The scattered stars island of the Inyang heaven have all evacuated and returned to the 1,000-star city. Even so, the 36 towns can't completely protect us." The Inyang heaven was facing an unprecedented major event. While Tang Yen and the others were actively dealing with the outside world, in the outside world, Han Fei had been wandering around the periphery of the savage abyss for almost half a month. In the past month, the suction force of the savage abyss on the outside world had gradually slowed down. However, as the suction force slowed down, it also meant that the depths of the savage abyss were returning to peace. Once everything returned to peace, it meant that it was time for the Inyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven to come out. However, although it seemed peaceful, it was actually because Han Fei hadn't shown up yet. As long as Han Fei showed up now, it meant that the hunt had begun. Rumble! Suddenly, Han Fei sensed that the suction force in this place suddenly stopped. "It's here." Han Fei's heart did a flip, and he pointed the navigator in his hand in a direction where the royal family of the mermaids was. With the navigator, Han Fei had already reached the place where the royal family of the mermaids stayed. He was waiting for the right time to fulfill his promise with Chun Huangyan. As Han Fei leaped several times in a row, he sensed that someone was glancing at him. Han Fei roared, "Chun Huangyan, it's time to fulfill your promise. I have to go to the savage abyss." However, Chun Huangyan said, "So, you don't know?" Han Fei was confused. "What do I know?" Chun Huangyan said, "Back then, Jiang Linxian and Han Guanshu looted a world and stored the 2 divine palaces in it. Then, they stuffed the small world into the savage abyss and sealed it with the Inyang mill. Now that the Inyang mill has collapsed, the world has no power to seal it, so it will be automatically spat out." Chun Huangyan was 1,000,000 kilometers away from Han Fei. He glanced at Han Fei and said, "If you go with the mermaids, you will be considered a traitor of the human race. Have you thought it through?" Han Fei chuckled. "What a waste of time!" Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, Han Fei took action. Millions of miles away, in the center of the savage abyss, a crack was being torn open. The waves here were tens of thousands of meters high, and a crystal ball that was sealed by a barrier flew out of the sea, emitting a bright white light. This was a small world in the truest sense of the word. In the yin-yang heaven. On this day, everyone raised their heads to look at the sky. All they could see was a pitch-black curtain of night. In the darkness, cracks were all over the sky, and crisp cracks could be heard now and then. It seemed that their whole world was about to be broken. The thousand-star city was already overcrowded. Everybody agreed that human beings should be united at such a moment. If there was only the thousand-star city, it could have been possible with the cooperation of the venerables. However, if they were too scattered, nobody would know how to deal with them. At this moment, in the thousand-star city, someone was uneasy. "Why do I feel that the world we live in is fake? Hasn't the wall of death been broken? Why is the vault of heaven shattered and the endless darkness is filled with cracks?" Someone sighed. "Don't overthink it. Lord King has proven that we are in an independent world. The outside world is also an independent world, and the two worlds can be combined." Someone shouted, "But our world is about to be broken. Are we going to die?" Someone said, "The human king said that he would seek a way of survival for us a long time ago, but he hasn't returned yet. Even the previous human kings were never away for so long." Among billions of people, an old man lived with a group of children in a side house outside of the Sioux family on the Pure Sun Island. A young man asked, "Grandpa Leader, will the human king really come back?" The village leader said with a smile, "Don't worry. I watched the human king grow up. He will definitely come back." Chapter 1955. Outside the savage abyss. Bei Luochen and the other powerhouses were already standing there. They didn't intend to look for Han Fei. For them, if they could directly control the yin-yang heaven and the shuemu heaven, they could even force Han Fei to hold back. There were as many as 10 pioneer sea-state powerhouses here, including Bei Luochen, who was a heaven creation state powerhouse. Among them was Huobuli, the master of the Golden Crow Heavenly Palace. His strength couldn't be underestimated. To be honest, with so many pioneer sea-state powerhouses attacking, Han Fei naturally wouldn't be able to resist them alone. Even the yin-yang heaven and the shuemu heaven had Tang Yen and the other kings. However, the combat strength of each king was different. They were far weaker than the kings of the immortal palaces in the outer domain. After all, how many resources could a king have in the yin-yang heaven and the shuemu heaven to improve themselves? The extreme lack of resources made it almost impossible for them to improve their strength. No matter how amazing their talent was, it was useless. Therefore, in Han Fei's opinion, Tang Yen and the others would be lucky if they could resist the two kings from the outer domain. In fact, they would only be able to resist the most ordinary kings from the outer domain. They wouldn't be able to resist the masters of the immortal palaces, even the masters of the immortal palaces in the outer domain. Therefore, Han Fei hadn't counted on them from the beginning. At this moment, the suction force of the savage abyss stopped for a brief moment, which was an extremely rare occurrence. The small world where the yin-yang heaven and the shuemu heaven were located was being spat out. Seeing that the small world was descending, Bei Luochen snorted. "Since it's out, let the yin-yang heaven and the shuemu heaven reappear in the vast ocean." Bei Luochen's giant hand slapped the transparent crystal ball that was already full of cracks. Crack, crack, crack. The cracks in the void were mended. But how could a small world that could contain two immortal palaces be ordinary? Bei Luochen's slap naturally couldn't break it. However, inside the small world, billions of creatures were horrified, because at that moment they felt as if there was a roar in the sky. The terrifying roar was so deafening that ordinary people's ears were a little deaf. For the people of the Inyang heaven and the Shuemu heaven, this feeling was no less than the end of the world. It was as if someone had hammered their hearts, leaving them with no guarantee of life. Rumble, if one slap didn't work, another slap would follow. The strength of heaven-opening stage experts was heaven-defying. No matter how strong this small world was, it could only block 8 or 10 times, but it might not be able to block 100 or 1,000 times. Dong, dong, dong. Not only did the Inyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven in the small world feel the terrifying roar of the Great Path, but Han Fei, who was tens of millions of miles away, could also feel the impact of the energy. 100 breaths later, a black crack appeared on the surface of the crystal ball. In an instant, the eyes of the beast kings beside Bei Luochen lit up. A crack has appeared. Bei Luochen replied, "This is a small world that we snatched from the Darch Palace. It's just a crack, so it can't reveal its true appearance. I'm curious as to how sturdy the small worlds in their hands are." Inyang heaven. Countless people pointed at the sky and exclaimed, "Look, the sky is splitting open, the sky is splitting open." Someone's eyes were filled with shock. The originally dark sky was actually torn apart at this moment, revealing a ray of white light that spanned across the horizon. This light was like a crack, opening above everyone's head. But at this moment, a voice that everyone had been waiting for a long time faintly came from the crack in the void. A voice shouted, "Son of the Wuji Old Turtle, Bei Luochen, are you going to cut off your path to opening the sky?" Swish, 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 a ray of golden light leaped in the void. When the crack resounded between heaven and earth, Han Fei finally arrived. From 1,000,000 miles away, Han Fei cursed loudly. In the Yin-Yang heaven, someone was puzzled. "I don't know if it's my illusion, but why did I hear the voice of the human king?" Someone was surprised. "Did you hear it too? I thought I was hallucinating." The ordinary people were asking each other if they were hallucinating, but the experts above the venerable realm all heard it very clearly. The Life Queen said, "It's him. But the situation doesn't look good." Jing'er asked, "Your Majesty, why do I feel that he seems to be fighting with someone?" The Life Queen frowned. "What I'm confused about now is, where exactly is this space we are in? Why can we still hear the voices of the outside world? And what was that roar just now?" In the outside world, Swish Han Fei suddenly stood 1,000,000 miles away from where Bei Luochen and the others were. Almost at the moment when Han Fei arrived, he suddenly had a bad feeling. He saw an arrow break through the void, penetrate the sky, and arrive in an instant, as if it wanted to kill him in an instant. And at this moment, there was nothing for Han Fei to hide. In front of him, a blue halo flowed, and the terrifying arrow suddenly slowed down by 10 times. As Han Fei reached out and waved his hand, the endless void was torn open, and the arrow pierced through it and disappeared. Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. "As a heaven-opening realm expert, you only know how to sneak attack me. Bei Luochen, you son of AB*TCH, how did you reach the heaven-opening realm?" Han Fei scolded the emperor as if he were scolding an iron-headed fish. He spoke fluently and without any discomfort. The people who were listening couldn't help but look at each other in bewilderment, thinking that this kid was really tired of living. Bei Luochen sneered. "Han Fei kid, it seems that you only know how to use your tongue. Even if the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven appeared in advance, I'm still here. Why don't you surrender? Maybe I can let the billions of living beings in this small world live." Han Fei's divine soul looked around vigilantly. He didn't know who shot that arrow just now, but the person was so strong that he was almost seriously injured even with the time spell. Han Fei said, "Old Turtle, do you think I don't have any tricks up my sleeves? How dare you come and snatch people from me?" Han Fei kept calling him Old Turtle and son of AB*TCH, which made Bei Luochen's mood very bad. He shouted, "You sharp-tongued kid, you want to save the human race? Let me see how you can do that. B'yim rumble, Bei Luochen attacked again, and hit the crystal ball 3 times in a row. The crystal ball was full of cracks and the void rippled for more than 100,000 miles. Han Fei was shocked. Seeing this, his face turned green. How strong is this bastard Bei Luochen? If he really slapped this small world until it collapsed, then it would really mean the death of billions of living beings. At that time, would he still be able to continue on his path of splitting open the heavens? However, while Han Fei was in a daze, Han Fei's heart tightened again. Han Fei's heart tightened again. He felt the void around him being sealed in an instant. Huh? How is it possible? Han Fei had been secretly watching the person who attacked just now, but unfortunately, he didn't notice it. However, the person could seal the void when he was so vigilant, which made his face change instantly. Heaven-opening state? The only thing Han Fei could think of was a heaven-opening state expert. If it was a sea-opening state expert, with the perception of his divine soul and his current strength, it was almost impossible that he didn't notice it. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a black robe suddenly appeared in the void, holding a big bow in his hand. After glancing at Han Fei, he said indifferently, "You're very vigilant, but your perception range is limited after all." Bei Luochen couldn't help but sneer. "You're a sea-opening realm expert after all. Thank you very much for your help." Han Fei suddenly looked up at this person. The master of the investiture of God's heaven, Huang Jingyuan? A sea-opening state expert on Bei Luochen's side scolded, "How dare you? How dare you call the palace master's name?" Huang Jingyuan said, "Han Fei, hand over Xia Shaochan and I'll leave this place alone." Bei Luochen quickly stepped towards Han Fei. Xia Shaochan was the reason why Huang Jingyuan was willing to come. If Han Fei really sacrificed Xia Shaochan, he would be in a passive position. Han Fei said, "In your dreams. I'll sweep the investiture of God's heaven one day." Bei Luochen was relieved when he heard this. Han Fei was really arrogant. As a sea-opening state expert, he dared to challenge 2 heaven-opening state experts. Today, no matter how strong Han Fei was, the void was blocked. Even if he had a way to escape, he wouldn't be able to escape with 2 heaven-opening state experts here. Huang Jingyuan also snorted and said, "You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. That arrow just now was just to test whether you used the Gemini divine technique or not. Now, how are you going to escape?" Han Fei had a strange look on his face. "Do you really think you can defeat me?" Swish at this moment, Han Fei had even used the time spell. How could the golden light movement technique hide? Although Huang Jingyuan could block the void, how could he block time? With a golden flash on Han Fei's body, he leaped directly into the river of time. The next moment, Han Fei appeared 600,000 kilometers away, looking indifferently at Bei Luochen, who was rushing over like a clown. Bei Luochen's pupils constricted, and he shouted in a low voice, "Han Fei is Wang Yijian. Stop him." Everyone was shocked to find out how Han Fei escaped, but when they heard Bei Luochen's words, they were all shocked. Han Fei is Wang Yijian? At this moment, taking advantage of Bei Luochen's departure, Han Fei rushed into the void and directly clasped the crystal ball. Chapter 1956. Of course, Han Fei saw Bei Luochen slapping the crystal ball. Han Fei wondered how the Inyang sky and the Waterwood sky, which spanned tens of millions of kilometers, could be contained in such a small ball. However, the demon purification pot could also forge the universe. So Han Fei was relieved. The old turtle suddenly said, "Hiss! Is this the legendary primordial spiritual soil?" Han Fei was about to ask what it was, but the old turtle immediately denied his judgment. It can't be the primordial spiritual soil. Otherwise, it can't be destroyed by the heaven-opening realm. At most, it's a small world mixed with the residue of the primordial spiritual map and the mystic yellow soil. Han Fei was speechless. "Is it appropriate for you to tell me this at this critical moment?" At this time, Huobuli attacked. Han Fei had never fought with this person before, but when he stomped his foot, the burning sky flames swept thousands of kilometers. In the flames, a giant serpent spat out blood-red flames and aimed at Han Fei with a locking technique. Han Fei roared and activated the Dao. He was in his strongest state. He stretched out 2 fingers and the Dao Convergence sword burst out. If he didn't have the power of the chaotic ocean, he wouldn't be able to resist such a sword strike at all. The pillar of flames was directly penetrated by this sword strike. The sword intent traversed 8,000 kilometers and blasted at Huobuli like a beam of light. Fire cage. Huobuli didn't care about the power of this sword strike. The fire serpent behind him attached to his body and 12 fire walls appeared in front of him like a shield. At the same time, Huobuli's figure rapidly retreated. His hands formed a seal and he let out a loud shout. The boundless sea of fire turned into many flaming needles. The needles were dazzling and had a strange dark red color on them. Fire poison? The 9 poison treasure silkworm was moving, and Han Fei's body was also absorbing the fire poison. But Han Fei wouldn't waste time with him here. Swish, the golden light flashed again, past the kings, and appeared directly above the transparent ball. The moment Han Fei stretched out his hand to grab it, the old turtle shouted, "No!" However, Han Fei was too fast. Although the old turtle shouted, he was still 1 step too late. Han Fei wanted to snatch the ball away. As a result, under Han Fei's terrifying speed, his whole arm exploded, golden blood splashed, and his broken arm directly turned into a blood mist. The old turtle shouted, "This thing is too heavy, it can hold 2 immortal palaces, it is not something you can carry." However, as soon as the old turtle said that, the transparent bead was dragged hundreds of thousands of kilometers away by Han Fei. Almost in an instant, a blue light flashed on Han Fei's body, and the broken hand disappeared from the void. Han Fei had returned to his strongest state through the time spell. At that moment, Han Fei was shocked. What a terrifying weight this thing was! Fortunately, he was a powerhouse in the Pioneer Sea realm. Otherwise, his whole body might have collapsed. Bei Luochen charged over again and shouted, "Ignorant child, how dare you hold up an entire world with 1 hand? What a fool's dream!" Huobuli also shouted, "Han Fei, you have fallen into an inescapable trap today. Do you still want to escape?" Huang Jingyuan shouted, "Han Fei, hand over Xia Shaochan, or I will kill you." The battle had already started outside, but the Yinyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven were still calm. The crystal ball flew 100,000 kilometers away and didn't seem to affect the inside of this world. However, countless people inside heard the shouts of Bei Luochen and Huang Jingyuan through the cracks. Han Fei's name appeared again and again, which shocked countless people in the Yinyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. From a certain point of view, the voices they heard through the cracks on the crystal ball seemed to be the voice of the heavenly Tao. For the people in the small world, it was like there were invisible gods standing in the sky, shouting and communicating with each other. Of course, although they could hear it, the voices were not so clear. After all, although this small world was broken, it didn't completely lose the protection of the heavenly Tao. The so-called small world and the outside world were just spaces. Since they were spaces, they all had the rules of the heavenly Tao. In a sense, they were not separated from this main world, but depended on the main world to exist. The most typical example was this sun-moon shell. This crystal ball was like a super large sun-moon shell. It was just much more advanced than the sun-moon shell. At this time, Shueishenqi and the others all pricked up their ears. In terms of the situation outside, Han Fei seemed to be very passive. The ordinary people also looked gloomy. Someone said with a black face, "The human king has really been seeking a way out for us. Although I don't know what the outside world is like, it seems to be very disadvantageous for the human king." Someone roared, "The human king will win." Someone said in a low voice, The human king is in danger. I wish I could go out with him and fight side by side. Gradually, in the 1,000-star city, the 36 towns, wherever there was a statue of Han Fei, people had already knelt down. The heavenly Tao had collapsed, and the sun and moon had lost their light. In such a doomsday scene, there was really nothing they could do except pray. Of course, everyone pricked up their ears. Although most people couldn't hear it clearly, some of the stronger ones could and knew that Han Fei seemed to be fighting. Han Fei didn't hold the crystal ball, and a black moon rose next to him, so he immediately used the golden light leap. He had to protect himself first. Otherwise, if he really had a head-on clash with Bei Luochen or Huang Jingyuan, he would probably be crushed in an instant. However, although Han Fei retreated, he didn't panic. In the void, Han Fei's voice sounded, "Chun Huangyan, have you watched enough? If you have, come out and get to work." What? Bei Luochen and Huang Jingyuan both frowned. Chun Huangyan? How did Han Fei get involved with Chun Huangyan? Wasn't the princess of the mermaid royal family abducted by Han Fei? Did Han Fei marry the mermaid royal family's son-in-law? Not just Bei Luochen and the others were surprised, but other experts were secretly watching the battle too. For example, a giant octopus hiding in the void was surrounded by a bunch of kings. At this moment, his voice was shaking. Has Han Fei betrayed the human race? An elder from the bottom of the sea slightly changed his expression too. If Han Fei is a traitor, will this still be a human strife? Won't he become the public enemy of mankind? How can there be a civil strife then? Hardly had Bei Luochen's black moon risen when he saw a person approaching. It was none other than Chun Huangyan. At this moment, Chun Huangyan was rather relaxed and had an evil smile on his lips. He immediately glanced at Huang Jingyuan and chuckled. One is from the Immortal Palace, which is ranked third in the 36 mysterious heavens, and the other is from the Sealing God's Heaven, which is said to be proficient in the God's Descent technique. 2 heaven-opening stage cultivators are actually unable to take down a pioneer sea king. It's a pity that you missed the best opportunity. Han Fei has a deep cooperation with the mermaid royal family. The Yinyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven will be protected by the mermaid royal family. Bei Luochen narrowed his eyes and looked at Han Fei, who had already fled, before he said coldly, "Good, good, the almighty master of the Yinyang heaven betrayed mankind and made peace with the sea demons. Leaving aside whether or not Chun Huangyan can protect the Yinyang heaven and the Waterwood heaven, your behavior has already infuriated everyone." Han Fei retorted, "I, Han Fei, don't need to explain to others what I've done in my life. On the other hand, everybody knows that you're plotting against the Yinyang heaven. I haven't split open the sky yet, so I'll let you live a few more years. You can try, but after I split open the sky, I'll definitely grind your bones into ashes." Han Fei's aura fluctuated, and he glanced around. He knew that there were actually a lot of sea expansion realm experts watching the battle in secret. As far as he knew, Tai Yuan was here too. Although the purpose was to intimidate the demons and the bottom of the sea, the barbaric abyss was full of experts today. If some of them didn't come out, you wouldn't know whether they were just watching the show or had other purposes. It was like the Wuji heaven was determined to destroy him. In fact, Bei Luochen had already stopped him once when he was still a half-king. To be honest, as a heaven-opening realm expert, would he really care about a mere half-king? At that time, Bei Luochen didn't know how talented Han Fei was, nor did he know that Han Fei could become so strong in such a short time. Therefore, Han Fei suspected that many people wanted to kill him for a purpose. The only reason Han Fei could think of was that he had the Multitude Navigator and knew the way out of the chaotic Azure Sea. Bei Luochen snorted. "You're so eloquent. How dare you dream of splitting open the sky? Let's see who else is coming today." Han Fei couldn't help but look at Chun Huangyan, wondering if he was the only one from the mermaid royal family. What could he do by himself? Where were the other 2 heaven-opening realm experts? At this moment, millions of kilometers away, in the middle of the tide, a gargantuan whale appeared. The monstrous waves it raised along the way carried the power of the Tao. Far away, everyone saw a man in green standing on the top of the 1,000-kilometer-long whale's head. He was holding a sword, and his hair was flowing in the wind. He looked quite extraordinary. The moment he saw this man, Bei Luochen gnashed his teeth coldly and said, "The Mermaid King, Emperor Li Qingdi?" First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1957. Han Fei frowned. Is this man Li Qingdi? Xia Shaochan once told him that when Chun Huangyan was still pretending to be a pioneer sea realm expert, Li Qingdi was the only heaven-opening state expert of the mermaid royal family. It was said that this man had always been mysterious. It was said that few people in the entire mermaid royal family had ever seen his true face. There was a reason why Li Qingdi could frighten the inner and outer territories and deter the heaven-opening state experts of the 36 immortal palaces. One reason was that no one thought that the mermaid royal family only had one heaven-opening state expert. For example, Chun Huangdian was a hidden heaven-opening state expert. The other reason was related to Li Qingdi's past. It was said that there was a period of time between 40,000 years ago and 50,000 years ago. At that time, there were no heaven-opening state experts in the chaotic vast sea, but people like Bei Luochen had almost reached the peak of the pioneer sea realm. At that time, Li Qingdi challenged 13 outer territories in a row in order to open the sky. He even defeated He Daoyuan, the master of the Grand Pure Sect. At that time, the immortal palaces had besieged this man once, but no one could stop him. After this man escaped, he didn't stop. Instead, he went directly to the martial emperor city to challenge King Wu. It was said that no one knew what happened in that battle. The news was that King Wu won a small victory, and Li Qingdi didn't lose. Instead, he understood the heaven-opening state. 3 months later, after Li Qingdi opened the sky, no one attacked the mermaid royal family again. But it was strange that Li Qingdi's battle only happened once in 10,000 years. Even if Bei Luochen had some speculations, he only guessed that Long Yujun might have hidden his strength and reached the heaven-opening state. He didn't expect that Li Qingdi would show up in person. Millions of kilometers away, Li Qingdi nodded slightly in one direction. King Wu. King Wu nodded slightly in response to Li Qingdi's nod. The two had met face to face. After that, Li Qingdi looked at Han Fei, and then a voice appeared in Han Fei's mind. After this, the princess must come back. Otherwise, I can help you or destroy you. No matter how talented you are still no match for me. Li Qingdi's words indicated that he completely agreed with Chun Huangdian's agreement with him. However, now that such a figure had appeared, Han Fei couldn't help but wonder why the royal mermaids spent so much effort to resurrect Xia Xiaochan's mother. Just how strong was his mother? According to what Chun Huangdian had told him about his mother, would he object to him being with Xia Xiaochan? She was the real son of God. If she didn't want to, then he would have to wait until he reached the heaven-opening state before he was qualified to mention the matter between them again. Han Fei was speechless. It didn't seem to be a good thing for a mother-in-law to have a high status. Han Fei responded, after this, I will go to the mermaid royal family with the girl. Li Qingdi couldn't help but look at Han Fei. Do you dare to go? I have an incarnation. Li Qing Emperor couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. It seems that I overestimated you. Han Fei said calmly, I don't need you to overestimate me. In Han Fei's opinion, if his real body went with Xia Xiaochan, he wouldn't be able to tell the royal mermaids that they didn't keep their word if he died. It was already a great sacrifice for him to let his incarnation go. If something went wrong, he would cultivate hard, and when his strength reached the peak, he would definitely annihilate the royal mermaid. Therefore, Han Fei didn't think there was anything wrong with his answer. When Li Qing Emperor came out, Bei Luochen had a bad feeling. He said, Li Qing Emperor, what you call is just the princess of the royal mermaids. If you capture Han Fei, can the princess of the royal mermaids escape? I didn't expect that the royal mermaids would cooperate with a kid. Li Qing Emperor smiled faintly. The royal mermaids have always been open and aboveboard. Of course, there's a reason to cooperate with him. We don't have to fight and scheme against each other like you humans do. However, the royal mermaids only protect the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven. As for the grudges within the human race, you have to solve them on your own. Chun Huangyan said, Huang Jingyuan, if you know what's good for you, get lost. You and I both know your purpose. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you here? Chun Huangyan wasn't so polite to the investiture of God's heaven. The investiture of God's heaven's target was Xia Shaochan. If Xia Shaochan died, his plan would be hopeless. By then, even if he destroyed the investiture of God's heaven, he wouldn't be able to make up for this loss. Li Qing Emperor also looked at Huang Jingyuan and said, If you stay, the investiture of God's heaven will be destroyed. Huang Jingyuan seemed to have guessed that Han Fei had reached an agreement with the royal mermaids. He said, Xian Qingzi, since you're here, why don't you come out and fight? When Bei Luochen saw Emperor Li Qingdi, he had already decided to retreat. But who would have thought that Huang Jingyuan wouldn't let go at this moment? Xian Qingzi was here, but if it weren't Li Qing Emperor, the battle could still be fought. But Li Qing Emperor was here, and you still want to fight? How much confidence did he have? He saw a person crossing the void. When he looked closely, he saw that the white-haired old man had an unfriendly expression. Xian Qingzi said, Huang Jingyuan, why did you call me out? Huang Jingyuan said disdainfully, Do you really think that no one will notice you here? Anyway, people will know that you've opened the sky sooner or later. What's the difference between knowing it sooner or later? Xian Qingzi said grumpily, Why don't you tell me how to fight? Huang Jingyuan said, You're Li Qing Emperor, right? You all say that my investiture heavenly palm is the god's arrival technique. I'll use this technique to see what level you've reached in the past tens of thousands of years. Then, Huang Jingyuan looked at Bei Luochen. You want to kill Han Fei, and I want to kill Xia Shaochan. You can do it yourself. Unless the royal mermaids can send a third heaven-opening realm cultivator today, you'll still have to fight. After saying that, Huang Jingyuan clasped his hands together, and a purple triangle appeared behind him. It looked like the halo behind the ancestor. However, it was triangular in shape, and its volume was slightly larger, enclosing itself within it. Investiture seal, open. Suddenly, there seemed to be a divine power descending in the vast divine light. Huang Jingyuan straightened two fingers, and a phantom appeared. The phantom had a human head and a snake body, which looked extremely evil. You god fuse. Even Bei Luochen had not expected this. He had not expected Huang Jingyuan to have the guts to fight Emperor Li Qingdi head-on. If he had known that Huang Jingyuan was so strong, he Dao Yuan and Dao Ran wouldn't have underestimated the investiture heaven. And the status of the investiture heaven wouldn't be what it was now. Bei Luochen couldn't help but wonder whether it was Han Fei or Xia Shaochan who had secrets. Was it worth Huang Jingyuan's effort? He didn't hesitate to expose his true strength. It seemed that they didn't come for Han Fei. But no matter what, both Han Fei and Xia Shaochan were bound to be disasters. Han Fei's cultivation speed was too fast, and his combat power was amazing. He mastered the time technique, and could even pretend to be Wang Yijian. He had only become a king decades ago, but he was already one of the top 10 cultivators in the chaotic vast seas. How could they let go of such a monster? Bei Luochen and Xian Qingzi looked at each other. Kill him. Han Fei's face turned green. What's going on? Why is this happening? Isn't Huang Jingyuan unbelievably strong? The investiture heaven was indeed not a kind person who dared to use such an arrogant name as the Divine Palace. Bei Luochen's black moon blossomed in front of the transparent crystal. Then, he stepped next to the crystal and launched a full-strength attack. At this moment, Bei Luochen was no longer tempting Han Fei to show up, but forcing Han Fei to accept his death. He roared, "Han Fei, are you going to give up these 2 divine palaces and billions of creatures?" Han Fei glared at him. "Bei Luochen, what you do today will be the end of the Wuji heaven. Chun Huangdian, if you can't even keep your promise, don't blame me for breaking the contract." Humph! Chun Huangdian shattered the sky with one finger, and the black moon was broken at his fingertip. Xian Qingzi brandished his sword, which split the heavenly river like a waterfall in full bloom. He intended to stop Chun Huangdian. The latter, on the other hand, grabbed the sword with one hand and crushed it. Rumble, a great battle broke out. The power of one attack caused the void within tens of thousands of kilometers to collapse, and seawater flooded the sky. Chun Huangdian, on the other hand, had already landed in front of Bei Luochen. Their fingers and palms collided. Bei Luochen seemed to be no match for the attack and was pushed back. Chun Huangdian pushed casually, and the small world in the crystal ball that Han Fei couldn't even lift was pushed 100,000 kilometers to Han Fei. Regardless of whether it would work or not, it happened very quickly. Han Fei felt that he should at least release Tang Yen and the others first. They might be of help to him. However, Huobuli led a group of kings and attacked him. Yes, even if all the heaven-opening state experts were stopped, there was still the master of the Golden Crow Heaven and the 9 kings. With such strength, if he only relied on himself, how could he block it? Han Fei roared, "The 100 demons and the heaven-opening state experts of the undersea human race, don't say that you're not here. Right now, He Daoyuan is besieging the Sword God's 4 palaces, and all the heaven-opening state experts of the 36 profound heavens are here. If you attack now, you'll gain more than you lose." Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1958. Perhaps in the Yin-Yang heaven, Han Fei only cared about destroying the sea demons and protecting the human race. But in the chaotic Azure Sea, from the point of view of those in higher positions, the so-called friends and enemies were separated by a single thought. Maybe he and the 100 Demons clan were still enemies, but in this situation, it was not impossible for them to unite. In the Yin-Yang heaven, Tang Yen and the others looked at each other in bewilderment. Has the battle outside involved heaven-opening realm experts? Just how strong was that person's combat strength? Hearing Han Fei's shout, a burly white-haired old man suddenly appeared above the sea. The old man looked at Han Fei. "Boy, is your trick to unite with the sea demons?" Han Fei shouted, "Senior, why don't you just sit back and watch the 3 heaven-opening realm experts of the 36 immortal palaces attack me? Is this what you mean by fairness?" Ha ha! A big octopus tentacle tore the void open and appeared on this battlefield. Tai Yuan. Han Fei is right. Bei Luochen and the others are shameless. As a heaven-opening realm expert, you're suppressing a junior in the sea expansion realm. You're shameless. Why do you still want to maintain the so-called fairness? Tai Yuan snorted. "It seems that you're going to stand on Han Fei's side today, right? That's good. 4 against 4. Isn't this fair enough?" On the other side, an old man who looked like a human came over with a long spear in his hand. His voice was deep. "It's been a long time since there was a battle for the heaven-opening realm. As for the sea expansion realm, it's none of our business." The big octopus of the 100 Demons clan also said, "Sea expansion realm experts, just watch the internal strife of the human race." Han Fei was relieved. That's good. If he were the 100 Demons clan or the underwater human race, he would also create opportunities for the sea expansion realm experts to kill each other. Not only that, he would even send his subordinates to ambush some of the sea expansion realm experts of the human race. However, in this situation, there was no need to ambush them. In his current state, Han Fei obviously couldn't drag the crystal ball small world. This crystal ball was too heavy. He had used the golden light leap technique to drag it over at his maximum speed, but even his palm had been crushed. Even if he used all his trump cards, the most he could do was to move the crystal ball. The success rate of putting it in his pocket was next to nothing. Now that Huobuli and the 9 kings had arrived, even Han Fei's expression changed. If it was just one person, then it would be one thing. But 10 sea expansion experts had suddenly appeared. Moreover, these people did not look weak. It would be extremely difficult to kill them in an instant. But Han Fei had the invincible heart. Why would he be afraid? Seeing that the kings were coming, Han Fei made up his mind, and a golden light flashed between his eyebrows. Invincible eye, open. Buzz. Han Fei's momentum soared again. In an instant, he flipped his hand and 2 strange forces were caught in his hand. Immortal Qi and Fiendish Qi instantly intertwined and were released. Immediately, Huobuli's pupils shrank and he shouted sternly, "Kings, help me. You all use all your strength to resist this heaven-opening expert's attack." Huobuli was indeed the master of the Golden Crow heaven. He instantly judged the power of Han Fei's attack, so he immediately switched from offense to defense. He shouted, "Golden Crow dazzling sun, fire sun divine disk, suppress." A divine disk of flames that was as resplendent as the sun extended out from the surface of the sea. It was as if a miniature version of a planet had materialized once again. At the same time, one after another, the power of the sea expansion realm blocked in front of Huobuli, forming a barrier of 9 kings. The immortal killing Qi was like the power of an immortal demon. Although it was extremely powerful, it was only an attack after all. It was too difficult to break the defense of 10 kings in a row. He could only hear the ka-ka-ka sounds. 8 barriers were smashed in a row. And the power of the immortal killing Qi couldn't really break the defense of the 9th level of the sea expansion realm. But even so, these kings were all shocked. How long has it been since he became a king? How dare he try to fight 10 of them alone? Most importantly, he had almost done it. Chirp, from the scorching sun-like fire disk, a firebird flew out. The scorching flames of heaven and earth rushed to Han Fei in an instant. This was an attack, and the bird was just a form. Attach. The only thing Han Fei could do was to attach Little Fatty to his body. Although Little Fatty hadn't reached the half-king level yet, its characteristics were very strong and it could block 90% of attack. Plus, he had fused with Little Fatty's body, so it shouldn't be a problem for him to block the attacks of several strong kings. Of course, having said that, Han Fei had already put on his battlesuit. The battlesuit he was wearing was made of the divine demonic vine leaves and the ancient mystic centipede shell armor that he bought in the martial Emperor City. In terms of grade, it could reach the quality of a mid-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure. In this way, Han Fei's defense power could be said to have reached an amazing height. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei's immortal killing Qi didn't work, and Huobuli's Golden Crow Firebird had already arrived. The 2 sides exchanged attacks. Rumble! The terrifying explosion caused the space where Han Fei was to collapse into an endless void. But in the aftermath of the explosion, Han Fei's battlesuit was slightly damaged, blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth, and Little Fatty's 2 tentacles were directly broken. Huobuli's heart skipped a beat. This person's defense power and physique are so terrifying. Under such a powerful bombardment, he had only suffered such a small injury. From this, one could see just how powerful he was. On the other side, Chen Guangjia, Shui Ran, Zhou Chen, and Xian Feng, who were also secretly observing, also looked at each other. Especially Xian Feng, her face was both shocked and angry. After all, Han Fei could only be weaker than all these people? Xian Feng asked, "Should we help him?" Shui Ran nodded. "Help? Xian Feng, look at the level of this battle. Anyone on Huobuli's side is enough to stop one of us, and there are 9 of them around him. Look at us. How many people do we have?" Chen Guangjia nodded slightly. Shui Ran is right. The top 10 pirate groups may sound nice, but each of them has a king. But who really dares to fight these strong masters of the Immortal Palace? Zhou Chen's face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. He couldn't help but look at Xian Feng and said lightly, "Can we help him?" Xian Feng made up her mind. "Guys, don't forget Han Fei's means of finding people. He knows that we are nearby. At this moment, the heaven-opening realm is blocked, and he is the only one left to fight the kings. We have the combat power of 4 kings, but we don't help at all. If Han Fei survives, how do you think he will deal with us?" Chen Guangjia asked. "Didn't they say that we only need to deal with the kings of the 13 outer heavens?" Xian Feng scoffed. "Are you stupid? How many kings of the 13 outer heavens dare to help him? I bet a group of them must have come by now. They are all hiding in the dark. If they don't take action now, they probably won't." In fact, as Xian Feng said, there were at least 7 or 8 kings who secretly came to the barbaric abyss. Among them, the Snow Girl and Huang Jie were there, but so were Hong Yu and Yanwen. It could be said that they were all pondering whether to fight or not. And the Snow Girl and Huang Jie were considering whether to help or not. But the 2 of them considered again and again. If they took action today, as an outer heavenly palace, once this matter was over, they would probably be suppressed to death. This made it very difficult for them to make a choice. Although they were allies, Han Fei's current strength was obviously not mature yet. If they exposed their allies at this time, they might be killed together. In the field, Han Fei was already engaged in a battle with Huobuli and the others. If he didn't use his ultimate move against the enemy, even if Han Fei was extremely powerful, he could only push his opponents back. He couldn't kill them. In particular, there were 3 B** stars from the investiture heaven. The 3 of them performed the god's arrival technique at the same time. Each of them carried a triangular halo on his back and attacked Han Fei horizontally. Some bombarded his soul, some caused abnormal blood energy, and some attacked him head-on. These were just the 3 from the investiture heaven. There were also those from the Wuji heaven and the Golden Crow heaven. Who could be weak? Clang, 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 bam, bam, bam. When the kings besieged Han Fei, they would bombard the crystal ball from time to distract Han Fei. In the Battle of the Sea Expansion Realm, once he was distracted, he might give his opponents an opportunity. Even though Han Fei and the others had been fighting fiercely in this group battle, the crystal ball was bombarded again and again. The crystal ball was bombarded again and again. Han Fei was furious. The infinity water rushed out and he shouted, "Explode!" In an instant, a large cloud of black smoke swept over hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Han Fei was furious. He released the infinity water and shouted, "Explode!" In an instant, a large cloud of black smoke swept over hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Ew, even Huobuli kept vomiting. It felt like he had eaten a vat of sh*t. Even a king couldn't resist it. The black smoke was naturally the stench collected by Han Fei in the land of King Grave. Anyway, he had eaten the yang calming bead to suppress the filth, but these people didn't. Although they were all experts in the sea expansion realm, they would definitely be affected by the power of the explosion of the infinity water. As long as they were affected, their brains would definitely explode from the stench. It couldn't hurt them, but it was enough to disgust them. Therefore, at this moment, Han Fei dashed out with all his strength and pierced through a melee king of the investiture heaven who was closest to him. When the void lines slammed down, Han Fei let out an earth-shaking dragon roar and crushed the soul of this person. Even so, Han Fei pretended to blow up a small part of this person's body and smashed him to another king. Seeing that the king of the investiture heaven was smashed to him, the king instinctively wanted to help, but the moment he touched this person, he heard Han Fei shout again, "Explode," the 3rd time. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1959. Rumble in the sky, cracks appeared. The heavenly Tao cried and blood rained down. This was the self-destruction of a king. How powerful was it? The entire void collapsed, revealing an endless void passageway. Aside from the fallen heavenly king god ordainment, Han Fei used his golden light movement art to appear next to the king, then unleashed a self-sacrificing punch that sent the king flying into the boundless void. Originally, it was very difficult to banish a monarch through the collapse of the void, because at the moment of being banished, there was a way for him to come back. Of course, if this way was blocked, it would be a different story. Blue light flowed in front of Han Fei, and the void was repaired. The king was finally completely banished, with no possibility of returning. At this moment, Bei Luochen and the others who were fighting fiercely were all shocked. 1 against 10, and he still had a chance to kill 2 kings? One had to know that being banished to the endless void basically meant that one had died. Not to mention the high probability of death after being banished, even the strong cultivators who descended from the sky had a high probability of death. Of course, this was just a speculation. Anyway, those who were banished would never return. They would be considered dead. Ha ha ha, the old man from the bottom of the sea laughed. This guy is really fierce. He can fight 10 against 1 and kill a king. Bei Luochen, you have to be careful in the future. The big octopus of the 100 Demon clan thought quickly. Is Han Fei already so strong after becoming a king? If this guy continues to grow, it will be hard to cure him. However, the existence of this guy may break the ruling pattern of the 36 Black Heavens, which was what they wanted to see. As for dealing with Han Fei, he had just become a king not long ago, so there was no hurry to deal with him. Besides, since Han Fei could cooperate with the royal family of the mermaids, he must have a bottom line. He should be much better than Bei Luochen and the other sanctimonious guys. Thinking of this, the big octopus shouted while fighting the heavenly Yuan clan, I didn't expect that the people of the Wuji heaven are all useless. I'm afraid they will all be slaughtered by Han Fei today. On the other side, Xian Feng shouted, we can't wait any longer. We are pirates. In their eyes we can be easily suppressed. Moreover, our rankings are not high. As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Sending charcoal in the snow is always better than adding flowers to brocade. Swish, Xian Feng used her words to provoke Qin Guangjia and the other kings who weren't so sure. Seeing Xian Feng rush out, the 3 of them couldn't help but look at each other thoughtfully. Shui Ran remarked, Han Fei is truly impressive. He was able to kill 2 kings under such circumstances. Qin Guangjia said, the 4 of us can stop the 4 kings. Can the remaining 4 be a match for Han Fei? Zhou Qin said, let's go. They attacked together. If he gives us hundreds of millions of resources for free, it's really troublesome. If I don't do anything now, I'm afraid I'll be punished later. Qin Guangjia. Forget it, kill. On the other side, Han Fei, Huobuli, and the others were fighting crazily around the crystal ball. Because everyone felt that the world represented by the crystal ball was extremely hard and couldn't be shaken by ordinary fighting, they didn't care about the crystal ball at all. Huobuli even patted the crystal ball from time to provoke Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly sensed something. Looking at Xian Feng who was charging at him, he was speechless. Why are you charging forward alone? However, when he looked back, he found that Qin Guangjia and the other 2 were also charging at him. Seeing this, Han Fei couldn't help but grin. He looked at Huobuli and said, me? You haven't even reached Sky Splitter yet. You want to kill me? Do you think I'm giving you face? Huobuli naturally saw Qin Guangjia and the others too. He couldn't help but shout, Han Fei, it's not enough that you betrayed the human race and colluded with the royal family of the mermaids. You even joined hands with the top 10 pirate group. It seems that the Inyang Heaven is going to completely betray the 36 Black Heavens. Han Fei cursed, F***ck the 36 Black Heavens. Do you think you're qualified to control the 36 Black Heavens? Do you think you're qualified to control the human world? As long as I'm strong enough, I'll defeat all of you one by one. I'll let you know that you're just stinky fish and shrimp. Unfortunately, the stench could only work once. These beast kings immediately cut off a wisp of their divine souls and directly destroyed the power of the stench. Almost all of them activated their secret techniques, wanting to use their Tao to kill Han Fei. However, Han Fei had the invincible heart and walked the path of body tempering. His divine soul was guarded by the 9 poison treasure silkworm and the demon purification gourd. It could be said that his body was as solid as an iron wall. These beast kings' Tao basically didn't have much effect on him. If he attacked head-on, these people wouldn't even be able to take one punch from him. They had to use the power of Tao to block it. Therefore, although Han Fei was besieged, every time he fought back, there were beast kings who were pushed back. Huobuli's face was ugly. This won't do. I can't even gain the upper hand. What's going on? Huobuli shouted, God-sealing seal of God-sealing heaven. Seeing that Huobuli asked them to use the God-sealing seal, the remaining 2 beast kings of God-sealing heaven looked at each other and suddenly retreated. They made a strange gesture with their hands, and the triangular mark behind them instantly enlarged infinitely. God-sealing seal, God's spiritual eye. 2 cracks appeared in the sky, and they looked at each other like a pair of big eyes. Han Fei felt the pressure on him was getting heavier and heavier. An extremely horrifying pressure was descending. Instinctively, Han Fei used the golden light leap and jumped 100,000 kilometers away. However, the power didn't decrease at all. The beast king of God-sealing heaven yelled, Han Fei, stop struggling. The gods are watching. Unless you give up the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven this time, don't even think about escaping. Han Fei sensed that his strength had been suppressed by at least 30%. At this moment, Huobuli's body changed drastically. Then, a weird creature with a human head and fiery wings appeared above the sea. Huobuli shouted, Golden Crow suppresses demons, world soul separating claw. Crack, crack, crack. Han Fei could see with his naked eyes that terrifying metal chi was falling crazily from the sky. Little Fatty's voice echoed in his head, I can't resist it at all. At this moment, Xian Feng and the others were still 500,000 kilometers away, a long distance away from him. The other 5 half-beast kings also attacked with their full strength, taking this opportunity to attack Han Fei. Arrows struck the soul, spears cut the void, saber lights tore the void, and sword chi intertwined. Han Fei seemed to have become a target. Who could resist him? Bei Luochen snorted. He hasn't reached the end of the sea expansion realm after all. No matter how talented he is, how can he be defeated by the attacks of so many kings? However, as soon as Bei Luochen sneered, he saw a 500-meter-tall, bronze-colored giant shadow that emitted brilliant yellow light appeared above the sea. When King Wu saw Han Fei's heaven and earth form, he couldn't help but be stunned. Didn't I teach him the firmament Dharma body? Does the firmament Dharma form look like this? Even King Wu was stunned. How is this the firmament Dharma form? It's just an enlarged version of Han Fei. Han Fei's figure appeared above the Dharma form's head. Huff! Han Fei felt the violent power all over his body. The pressure of being stared at by the god's spiritual eye was immediately reduced to nothing. Han Fei raised his hand, and the Dharma form did the same. Tao Convergence Sword. Han Fei had never tried to use the Tao Convergence sword with his Dharma form, and the power was even 50% stronger than when he used it himself. At this moment, Han Fei felt that his power might have reached 800,000 waves. When such a blow collided with the heaven and earth soul-separating claw, boundless ripples were set off, and the power radiated for more than 100,000 kilometers in the blink of an eye. Gotcha! But at this moment, the crystal ball unexpectedly cracked again, and an obvious crack appeared. It turned out that under their continuous battles and unscrupulous bombardment, the crystal ball could also be broken. As soon as the crystal ball was broken, Huobuli and Han Fei's attention was immediately attracted. Huobuli wanted to threaten Han Fei through the small world, and Han Fei wanted to take the small world away. The two collided with each other but failed, so they both attacked the crystal ball. At this moment, Xian Feng and the others arrived. Huobuli shouted, "Stop them!" All of a sudden, only Huobuli, two overlords of the Apotheosis Heaven, and a king of the Wuji Heaven were left to stop Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't care less. Seeing that the god's spiritual eye was still staring at him and that there was another person guarding there, he couldn't help but counterattack with the immortal killing aura. Han Fei shouted, "I, Han Fei, am the king of humans, but I can also be a demon. Anyone who stands in my way deserves to die." At this moment, Han Fei held the color of the sky and blocked the crystal ball with a giant hand, while a black saber slashed at Huobuli with the weird power of heaven and earth. Dragon-slaying technique? Swish! Huobuli immediately retreated. The great solar disk appeared in front of him and blocked the dragon-slaying blade. Puff! Swish! At this moment, Han Fei didn't care about the hidden power anymore. He pressed his big hand on the crystal ball, trying to move it. However, without the speed bonus, although Han Fei could barely move the small world, he could only move it 1,000 kilometers in one breath. Han Fei was speechless. How did old Han and I manage to carry such a heavy thing to the barbaric abyss? I guess they were not as powerful as me at that time. Do they have the strength to move it?